Hello again, end users. This is another quote-unquote bonus episode. So on September 4th, I started a Twitter space called How to Explain iOS 15 to Your Mom, and we didn't talk about that at all, but that's fine. And had a great experience because of two people. Well, I'll include Sim at Upload Speed, who from Extratone Legacy days. Two new friends at Arson at Denny's and at Allison Buki came in and indulged me for like 2 hours about social media, software, and sort of what I've been doing and why I feel insane. So this may or may not be, I thought it might be a good explanation, a better explanation of what's been going on with me. And also, you get to hear some new perspectives. But yeah, and also, it's just going to cut off. The recording's just going to cut off because Twitter Spaces is fucking broken. But yeah, Build.World at Upload Speed, at Artisan at Denny's, at Allison Buki. And I'm going to update the show notes with any of the relevant links. Keep it real.
Warning, this is an emergency alert. A bozo level automation has been triggered. A bozo level automation has been triggered. A bozo level automation has been
Good morning.
Hello.
Thank you for coming. I just realized that, well, my recording setup, because Twitter is broken, is not as robust as I thought it was, of course. But whatever.
I hope we get lots of fans in here.
Well, I have to say I did not, this is not in the hot tub category this time.
Bro.
On Twitch. I know there are going to be a lot of people that are disappointed about that.
Are we on Twitch?
Yes, but no, don't worry. I just basically was like, so I would stream to YouTube, except literally nobody watches YouTube streams now. And I can just, basically I can just, immediately send whatever I record on Twitch to YouTube anyway.
Of course.
Okay, I'm gonna stop messing with this. There's just, I love my life so much. And I love it. I'm not even saying that disparagingly. I just love how confused I am at all times. Oh my God, you're co-hosting. This is a historic moment.
Hey gang, I'm co-hosting.
Oh no, I didn't make this intentional. I left Billie Eilish playing in the background because I'm young and very in touch.
You're so hip.
Oh God, but I can't shut it off because it's playing off of an iPad Air 1. Anyway, how are you?
I'm good. I woke up. That's about it.
Just for this?
Yeah.
Well, that's, I will be sharing any revenue we get today. Oh yeah, I said I wasn't going to talk about, I'm only going to talk about glimmers as which is apparently the New York new media term for just like stuff that's positive. I just finished the movie Coda on Apple TV, and it literally singularly justifies the existence of that service. That's okay. Instead of saying that, I should just say it was the most emotionally, like, I was more touched in the traditional, phraseology of that term by that movie than I have been in a long time, by anything. Oh!
What is that movie?
Check this out. Am I a little loud now?
Yeah, I don't like that.
Okay. Sorry. Alright, that's the one.
Hell.
Yeah, that's a random Twitter Spaces that they basically they talked about once. Yeah. Anyway, it's a movie about a young woman who's in high school age, about to graduate college, who both of her parents and her brother are all deaf, but she's not. And so I guess that's an element that I'd never been exposed to before. And it's just like, and she really likes to sing, and they fish for a living. Like they're like working class people. Yeah, actually the story honestly is pretty generic. It's not about the story. It's just there were extended periods of time where there was no spoken dialogue and it was just ASL. Honestly, I wish there was more of that, but like I don't know. It was a movie that did something actually slightly different from any of the other films recently.
I can't remember last.
Oh my god. Jesus. Why? Why would they include the like it's like the specific transformations that they included are just
They're all bad.
they're like don't be disruptive. Don't go into spaces and be disruptive. That's why we built this so that people could be less disruptive. Oh, by the way, you like here's your
Here's the
fucking
megaphone, Mike.
yeah.
I can't remember the last time I saw a movie.
You know, I think
Maybe.
you know movies, right? You know, I don't like the I figured out a while ago that I just don't like them like but what's the last movie you saw?
Like new movie or like rewatched?
Just when's the last time your eyes set were like your set eyes upon a film on a screen?
I was having a nice date a week ago and we watched Looper.
Looper.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
I'll have to look that up. That's cool. You actually dating.
Yeah,
It's a big thing.
it's a thing.
It's a big thing for a young man.
Yes.
God. Okay. Was it like a positive how early was how long have you known this person?
Like 2 months.
Okay. That's very in the traditional stratification of dating, that's when you can start to like gradually admit that you're very obsessed with One Piece. That's the joke anime, right?
One Piece and JoJo.
Yeah, I mean, and then and act like it's an unusual thing.
Yeah, I've been up to date with One Piece. I've seen like all 600 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, like I feel like we only even well, I wasn't gonna say vaguely self-aware living and working people like one or two shows in our lifetime that we get to be like actually not about like actual authorities in. I dated this girl who you know The West Wing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I'd heard of it. I had no idea. Her show that she knew everything about was The West Wing, which is like the hardest. It's like it's like you chose like what deliberately the most like hard to digest amount of IP to like know off. She would just speak the dialogue for the entire like she would put it on and we would sit there and then she would just speak the dialogue.
I actually don't know anything about West Wing.
It's very okay. It's like think of like okay people that write television scripts screenplays like and that's their craft. Think about like somebody who was like go all out bro go just fucking fuck it up like ultra heavy like dialogue heavy it's if you ever do watch it it's about like the presidency and like everybody in the show is perfectly well spoken and they speak very fast and there's like zero like the scripts are flawless, which if you watch that like now or even any bit of it in contrast with like the Trump administration or honestly any real person, it just seems so it's just for lawyers. It's like for people that love that like that East Coast type, but that like the authoritarian law type. The type that like knew all about Alexander Hamilton and like had read a significant amount of his shit before the Broadway musical. But it's just like it was very weird for her to be in it. I mean, I respected it tremendously because I realized I would never even remotely approach the level of knowledge of like but then again I really like when you're just actually just speaking the dialogue aloud like what is the point? Are you trying to impress me because you already have you know
You already watched West Wing. I know you're impressive.
well, like, you know, even you could do it and just kind of like prove that you can. Hello.
At first I thought Westworld, the like sci-fi show.
Yeah. Very but those are cult following shows. Please do request. Oh yeah. Sorry. I have to be very careful with this application because I'm broken. Hello.
Hey,
I feel
are we
like
talking about Westworld?
oh god. Have you been lurking in the Twitter like twitter.com/i/spaces search waiting for
Westworld?
someone to talk about Westworld?
That's right. I've been skipping through spaces, joining and leaving until someone says Westworld.
Well,
That's what
is
I'm
it-
here for, baby.
Yeah.
I've seen a season of it. That's about it.
Yeah, me too. That's exactly. Except, okay, the additional anecdote. Westworld for my life is that a publication. Sim, do you remember the outline?
Yeah.
How much I talked about it? Well, they literally had a dedicated Westworld podcast.
Are you kidding me?
And now all the people, like a bunch of people that work for the outline, I am in, like, I pay for their Patreon podcast. They're the people that do Over Understood.
Yeah.
Over understood.
And I brought it up with them because I was like, finally, now that I've paid my way, you can finally respond to me. You didn't respond to all those emails I sent for years.
Please tell me you actually sent emails to them.
Well, I did not about that, but like, so I brought it up with, like, I was like, oh, hey, Westworld, right? Like, that fucking like 3-year long podcast that you guys did that was one of 2 audio productions of your publication. And they were just like, yeah, they didn't say it. I was like, what the fuck? Anyway.
Did they explain why Westworld?
Oh, I didn't actually listen to the podcast. I should say that.
No. I meant, did they explain why they did the Westworld podcast?
Not precisely. I think it was. I think you probably could still listen to it. The publication still up. I think it was definitely assumed that you knew why if you were listening, which is like, I don't know. You really like it. I was like you. I watched one season of it. I mean, it was interesting, but I don't think that I could have a friend group around that television show. Or certainly couldn't host a podcast about it.
Right.
But,
yeah, it was a fine show, and I probably would have watched more. I think I stopped more because of kind of like how much interest I had at the time in watching shows than in like my attention span, not so much as the show not being good or whatever,
Yeah.
I could see myself watching all of it if I was watching it with friends, but since I wasn't really, I ended up never really continuing it. But yeah,
that's very healthy. It's
not healthy. I'm just like terminally online in a different way, I guess, than videos. Videos just don't do it for me.
Same kind of. I actually used to say I don't like film, but I do like television as a medium. Okay, actually, this is a question I want to ask. Hello, people that may or may not still be in here because of how unreliable this application is. YouTube videos are too short. Like, I think for a lot of people, YouTube has replaced television, but I've tried to do that. And honestly, it's like, oh my God, you overproduce this thing that you did not have to overproduce. And now I have to, I feel like I'm spending my whole life creating a queue. Yeah, I just can't do YouTube.
Wait, they're too short now?
Well, I feel like, okay, when I say too short, I feel like 25 minutes is not long enough. For whatever. I was on YouTube really early, and then I kind of got over it,
YouTube discourse videos. Wait,
what?
Like long YouTube videos explaining the discourse of the day.
Philip DeFranco show.
I'm sorry, what?
The Philip DeFranco still does that's first generation YouTuber, did a daily,
like a Gen X thing?
Honestly, basically, yeah.
I'm teasing, but yeah.
No, definitely. I mean, I feel ancient because I did put up YouTube videos when I was like 14 of, the bad. Literally, I had a camcorder that I think 360p was the max, and that was a big deal for me. And then I just did it for a long time, and then I kind of got over. And now all of a sudden, it's kind of like podcasts. Like all of a sudden, it's a very important part of other people's lives, and it just has utterly been burned out from it to me. And it's literally that shit is too well produced now, I guess. I don't know what I'm saying. My opinions aren't that important. I'm going to make this about how confused I am generally about life. So.
Oh no, but that's a great topic. But no, I think you're probably right. I mean, I imagine there's all kinds, but I'm really not a big YouTube user, so I couldn't speak to the typical experience if there is such a thing. I just had in mind kind of specifically recently I've seen links on Twitter to 2-hour-long YouTube videos on I don't know, oh gosh, what was the most recent Lindsay Ellis video or something like that? Does that ring a bell to anyone?
I mean, since things became, I have no idea. I have no ability to actively consume content from YouTube in a intentional way. So no, I'm sorry.
For sure.
Okay, so I feel like I know you from Twitter. But that's the thing is it's been over a decade now of me being on the day. So do we know each other from somewhere?
I don't think so.
Cool.
Let me think. Looking at your profile, I'm trying to guess where I followed you. Okay,
my history has been Crazy Hooligan, Asphalt Apostle, Depraved Infant, and then there's one more in there. Oh, Fickle Crux. God, that was a pretentious era of my life.
Yes, it was.
I'm sorry, those do not ring a bell. I've only started using Twitter in the past year and a half, which was possibly the worst possible time to get on Twitter, but also a very understandable time.
That is so fascinating.
Yeah. Like right before the pandemic, I'd been stepping up my use of Twitter. And I was like, huh, they're talking about this virus that's in China. And, you know.
Yeah, I guess.
What did
I
you
would-
use
you know, I-
before that? Mostly Tumblr, right?
Yeah, I was on Tumblr a lot.
Yeah. See, I feel like my Tumblr era ended like five plus years ago, and then like I switched to Twitter, and that's been my main thing ever since.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, it's amazing. I'm still, but I don't know. It's like, I feel like it's kind of one of the least ruined ones. Like, I mean, it's still bad and awful, but like they don't have a business model. So they like haven't fully fucked it up yet in the way that like, I feel like Facebook and Tumblr and all these ones just got ruined.
Wait, what are you talking about? Tumblr went from $1 billion to, I think, 3 million?
Yeah. No, that's true. But I don't know.
Like, it's the peak, most useless social media site for, like, monetization.
But there's, like, so many shitty ads and stuff. And they like, took, you know, they banned porn and all that stuff. Like, it's just, like, I don't know. That was, like... I guess you're right in that the content and like there's still like probably community and stuff to be found. But for me, I guess like I got more interested in Twitter, I think around the same time that I was like kind of starting to transition my career. And there's like a lot of people on Twitter. So it was a good way for me to like actually do like meaningful networking that's not like skeezy, like finding people that I think are cool and not awful, and like also interested in like all the nerdy things that I am. I like Twitter's a little bit more personal, or it can be, than like Tumblr, which is like a little bit more anonymous. I don't know.
Thanks for hello, by the way. I'm not going to respond with any of the deluge of thought that I've expressed recently about those things. Oh, except you gotta remember, like on you are totally right about Twitter is not skeezy in that they are so incompetent that they're like unable to. You can have faith that their incompetence is kind of keeping them from doing anything all that malicious. However, it's literally to the extent that it's very bad. Like I don't understand as an organization from the evidence that I've seen in the past year, specifically having delved into the transition from Periscope to Spaces. Like I don't think anyone in that company is doing anything.
Yeah. Oh, it's super dysfunctional. I know a couple people there, not like personally, but I know if you read, there was like recently a New York Times article about like some manager, like higher level manager they hired that was like a real dick that everybody hated and like tried to like change the culture because it's like we're not innovating or like some bullshit. I don't know. I don't know that much like insidery Twitter tech drama, but I agree that it's kind of like I feel like Twitter and then like Medium and stuff like that are sort of a product of like just way too much VC money and people making things just because they can, not because like they actually can make money. At least that's what it seems like.
Yeah, the thing is, that's actually most of our generation of tech. Like, that's what Google was. The difference is that they have continued their incompetence. So I wasn't talking about, like, the story or the culture of Twitter. I'm literally talking about the software. As in this application that we're using right now, Twitter has never, like, they never built their own mobile Twitter client. They bought, God, it's Tweety or I get them confused. And if you go and look in the internal files in iOS, they haven't even bothered to change. This was over 10 years ago. They have not bothered to change the name of the app. It is still known to iOS as Tweet. They're just, yeah. But I've literally every space that I've hosted up to this point has been me ranting about just the bizarre little ways that they are incompetent.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing about software, though, is that, like, it mirrors, in my experience, like, organizational incompetence. So it's always, like, people behind it, and I think that the shit that isn't working and that's bad is really a function of, like, you know, just, like, organizational dysfunction. I don't know. that part's always like just as interesting to me as like looking at the code and seeing what's fucked up about it.
Yeah, I don't know. That's Twitter is hilarious. Okay, actually, I should say this. It was so funny for the first 12 years of me being on Twitter, of me literally basing my entire social function, in contrast to you guys, it sounds like I have been on this application, like the vast majority of my adults and colleagues that I have corresponded with regularly over my whole adult life up to this point are adjacent to Twitter in some way, in a way that's unfortunately I can't get them unstuck.
Yeah, I met you on
but
Twitter like 9 years ago or something, 8 years. I don't know.
So I've realized recently that I am particularly and like notably emotionally invested in it in a way that's which is the only reason that I would, take the time to publicly say anything about it. But so it was like funny. It was funny and then all of a sudden, and I think it was around 2017, 2018, like now when things happen that make other people laugh about this app, like just, oh yeah, they said they were going to respond to you in 10 days, and it's been I think it's been over 3 months now. It's literally just like, how the fuck? I don't know. I'm not funny anymore, which basically has removed my entire internet value, and I'm just confused and upset, and that's not positive at all. But you guys should try Mastodon, because it's like Twitter was in the beginning. Sounds like you guys didn't get to experience that, which it was like this random bounce house of people, and nobody really talked about anything like heavy unless they specifically sought to. So you could just meet people that you disagree with in some ways, but we're both interested in motorcycles, and then hang on to those connections. And yeah.
I'm loving the old man shakes fist at clouds energy of like in the old days of Twitter back in 20.
Yeah, I mean, so much has changed that it really is, I mean, in ways. I've written, like, I've spent so much of my fucking time this year writing about social media, and I've accepted that I'm basically gonna be doing it my whole life. Oh god, I accidentally.
Well, there's like so much to unpack there. Like I'm very interested in it too, like as somebody who unfortunately majored in like media studies. I've heard it's funny, I like signed up for Twitter very early, but I didn't use it at all. And it was only because somebody I was dating was like on it all the time and would like look at their phone constantly, and I'd be like, what the fuck? And so I basically like got on Twitter like because of her and started using it in a way that because Twitter is a very unique one in that like I feel like to get the most value out of it you have to be kind of addicted to it, otherwise it like doesn't make sense, or I don't know.
I actually would disagree distinctly with that, but I understand how it seems that way now, because
I mean maybe it didn't used to be like that, because like I mean some of my good friends here like basically like like the reason I was able to move to New York in the first place was because of all the people I met on Twitter. So like I think that definitely it can have a valuable like impact on still like people to like make real meaningful connections based on like shared interests and stuff like that. But I also recognize what a kind of mess it is, and how bad it's become just because of scale. And then of course, because of like the way that, prominent people like celebrities and politicians and stuff use it. But yeah, no, I mean, I've also heard kind of like, oh, the old days of Twitter, it was like actually good or whatever. But I think a lot of that has to do with just like how much bigger it's gotten, and the rise of like celebrity and it just being used as like an outlet for those type of people.
definitely. It's also I would argue specifically the tools are actually still there in Twitter to help you refine your experience. So I just wrote a thing that, I mean, it was too haphazard to actually get succinctly, but basically good compared to how other people, their lives and their relationship with social media seems to be this thing where they, I don't know, see things that are unexpected, and content and people that they wish to hear from, like push their way into their lives and disrupt it somehow. That doesn't happen to me. It never has. I basically like only see shit people I want to see things from, because I use lists and I never see ads. And I see it all chronologically, but the reason why I would, because it sounds like me being like I know and you don't, but it's literally like the only reason that we don't all talk about this. I'm actually proud of Twitter because they updated their lists documentation fairly recently. Is because they don't have an incentive to, and their incentive is, well, actually incentives don't necessarily matter when the company is that incompetent. But yeah, like you can
They not have an incentive to? I think I lost you there.
So there are tools. Twitter gives you tools to take control yourself over the things that you consume, or over your consumption, right? Lists, and if you're using a client like Tweetbot, for instance, the specific like that you can get very quickly with setting up filters, like is absurd. But there is no business incentive for them to better your experience. And that's why it's not even malice. It would be so much easier to combat this dynamic where people are losing control over their social media if they were actively oh, we're gonna take it away from them. The only company that does that is Facebook. Yeah, it's
yeah, I see what you mean. It's kind of like your experience on Twitter is to some extent like the product of the time and effort you put into curating your timeline and using block lists and stuff like that. But it's kind of I guess for the casual user or somebody who's not really into doing that, putting that amount of effort into it, the baseline experience is pretty shitty.
That's the thing. Is it okay? So basically, the people we're talking about, or I don't know, we could argue, right, that there is no such thing as a casual Twitter user. If I'm just saying that I'm trying to insert opportunity that I get. Fortunately, tech media has failed to keep the basic things in check that have been expected, like basic documentation of shit. Sorry, I'm getting off the rails here. I've got distracted by something. I'm trying to insert into the conversation. It's not anything big. It's not a big, sexy conspiracy story. It's literally down to chronological timelines. But the amount of time that I've actively spent curating, quote unquote, is so minuscule on Twitter compared to I mean, a lot of it is that I can't follow anyone else, and I have to for, oh god, I just calculated this. Why am I blanking? It's 5 years. It's vaguely around October 2017 I hit the follow limit, and I have not been able to follow anyone else on Twitter.
There's a follow limit on Twitter?
What?
There is. You should
what are you talking about? That's not true.
This thing that's happening right now, that's been my experience for the past 5 years. There's actually a Twitter help document, and if you go, this sounds self-promotional, but it's not. If you go to my profile and open a tree that's linked profile, the first link is entitled "Why I Didn't Follow You Back," and it is as concise an explanation of the follow limit as
But
I
what
could.
about those tech marketer people that follow you that had there used to be all these people that had 100,000 followers and 100,000 people they were following.
So this was the original
did they just purge
ratio.
that?
The ratio thing is actually unfortunately, we thought it was a dynamic that just users were talking about, and just an academic talking about the follow to followed ratio as a thing. It's actually it's a technical thing. The document. Okay, the funniest thing is when I first hit the follow limit, I had never heard of it. And there were no help documents on Twitter. Twitter did not acknowledge that it existed. And every once in a while, I did a search and I could find people that were like, "Hey, I encountered this," and then we're trying to reverse engineer it, right? But the document literally, it didn't give the number specifically of how many. Okay, so I should explain. Basically, if you follow. If you hit 1,000 people that you are following, but less than 1,000 people follow you, somewhere around there, it's actually a concrete thing now. But back in the day, somewhere around there is when the algorithm would determine that you could not follow any more people until a bunch more people followed you.
I see. Okay, so it's a way of it thinks you're a bot or something.
Yeah, except the thing is, there has never been an API that allowed for people to mass follow. If you listen to anyone that does follow 1 million people, Marcus Trill, who I just had a very bizarre and a lengthy conversation with for the first time recently, he's got the record for the amount
Who
of people
now?
followed. He followed every one of those people with his own hands, except for when he was like, he paid some guy to develop something that simulated human input because the API does not accept a certain level of anyway. Yeah, there's never been a reason for and because so I don't look at my timeline. We're getting technical now, and it's stuff that I said much more concisely in the stuff that I've written about this. But I don't see my timeline ever. I use Tweetbot literally is configurable so that my specific lists make the main timeline. And it's not a unique thing necessarily with Twitter clients, but I don't see ads. I see things chronologically.
I thought they took that away because people were complaining recently about no more chronological timeline, but maybe they complained too hard and Twitter actually changed it.
If you go to the home screen in this app, guess it's reset again. Yeah. And there's a little star icon in the upper right hand corner. If you tap that, mine says right now your timeline is set to home. And then it says switch its tweets. And it will reset constantly and inexplicably back to being algorithmically curated. Yes, people did complain. Yes, it is more or less linear from what I know. I really stopped. Look at what I'm doing with my life. I stopped paying a lot of attention to the specifics of people just don't hold them accountable for the most basic things like that. So yeah, it's probably more or less chronological if you switch that and keep it switched. I mean, in my opinion, there's no reason to extensively use this service in this application because it is distinctly the worst maintained piece of mainstream social software that I have ever seen and anyone else has ever seen by a long way. And I'm talking about
I would like to bring up Tumblr
in the
as a
words of our former president, I'll keep drinking that garbage. I know Twitter is a piece of crap and it barely works a lot of the time, but I don't care. I guess I've definitely my approach to curation was much more about who I follow, who I mute, block lists, stuff like that. I don't really use lists that extensively. Maybe I should. But
it
yeah.
just depends on on how and who. But yeah, let's talk about I don't know much about Tumblr and how it's doing. I do know that they they're one of the only applications. So I actually wanted to talk about iOS 15, but I'm glad I'm not because that's all I've done for the past few months. There's this thing in iOS called Siri shortcuts. It's a automation thing that but yeah, and there so I set up a Siri shortcut the Tumblr support of it that if the phone hears me cough or sneeze, it takes a picture of from the front-facing camera and immediately posts that picture to Tumblr without any opting in. I played a prank on myself. The sound recognition, but yeah. So also I was able to post ridiculously huge pieces of using that action in an automated sense. I should just give you a specific Tumblr link. I think it's drywallmusic.tumblr.com. Yeah, Tumblr, Yahoo, Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. God, Automatic. The WordPress people to whom I gave much of my life as a registered WordPress developer. Matt Mullenweg, who is distinctly the creepiest sounding tech CEO by far. And no one says it. I mean, I think he's a nice guy, but just hearing him speak is he just sounds like a real creep, just viscerally. That's very judgmental. But Matt Mullenweg, who's the creator, CEO of WordPress, number one guy of WordPress, even though it's anyway, sorry, I got off topic. They own Tumblr now. They also own they just bought Pocket Casts, which is my favorite.
But Yahoo initially bought, right?
Yes, and Yahoo is sort of they are the people that famously lost so much money. I just found out I forgot that Yahoo offered Facebook $1 billion to buy Facebook when they were just 35 people above a Chinese restaurant. And the craziest thing is that Mark turned them down. But yeah, Yahoo at least they try though, I actually lived by Yahoo headquarters for a little while. Okay, I say by my doctor's office was by there, and every time I drove by, this was in, let's see, 2018, it was a bunch of like people in Yahoo t-shirts jogging, but it distinctly like not even commenting on like their physique at all. It was just people you knew who did not want to be jogging. It was like something you can tell, you know? And they would jog in packs. And it was just like, hey, why aren't you guys like fixing Tumblr? But yeah, I'm thank you guys for like coming in here and indulging me, by the way, and talking about this. Because, you know, I've it's just really hit me how like, I don't know, I'm really wrapped up in this, and like I feel like the only unique thing I have to contribute is focusing on like the smallest areas where these companies are not held accountable anymore. It's literally in things like, hey, we'll get back to you in 10 days, and then they don't. And I know it sounds minor, but you have to start there, in my opinion. But yeah, so Tumblr, holy fuck, Automatic owns them now. I have absolutely no idea why the fuck the WordPress people bought Tumblr.
I mean, for that last, honestly, if
I don't know what happened. I say that as if I don't know.
Seems like he's muted again. Maybe
Sorry, folks.
Connection issues. I don't know.
Yeah, this thing happens with Spaces, and it has for good God, going on a year now, where there's a transition at some point, and it literally there we go.
Yeah, no, that wasn't the app for once. I was just having an IRL conversation. But
what the hell is that?
Wow, how could you?
It was a funny joke.
But like Tumblr, I think some said it was under 20 million, and I think the final figure ended up being like 3 million. And if I happened to be like someone who was in tech for like 10 years as a developer, me and a couple of friends would be able to afford it. And that's just ridiculous to me. Like for an app that is that many people still have used for so many years.
Yeah, you can still export your Tumblr archive too.
Sorry?
Yeah, let me find. I've forgotten how to highlight. Matt Mullenweg has a blog, and it's like, I can't remember what it is. Oh, sorry, I'm not very.
I guess I'm not surprised that WordPress bought it, just because I mean, as long as they weren't inheriting liabilities for that price tag, that seems like a
dude. Okay. You just said liability. The people that own WordPress, they've clearly proven, if anything, that liability is not something that anyone needs to worry about. Okay, I'm searching the word Tumblr.
I guess it's kind of makes sense because it's sort of in their domain. They're kind of like one of the biggest, like, I mean, WordPress is blogging software, you know, Tumblr.
It's
you know, was maybe one of the more widely used like social blogging platforms. And
yeah,
hey,
well,
it's cheap.
It's fundamentally, it's that they're content management systems that were turned into, or that were like popularly. So like WordPress.com is a social blogging platform, but the actual software behind oh God, no one wants. I'm sorry, I'm literally mansplaining this right now, but like it is worthy of differentiation for no ideological reasons. It's just Tumblr is actually a really great CMS. Like the software is incredible when you think about and distinctly, I think better than WordPress, but that's not a difficult thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, WordPress is also sort of like open source. It's like this, like I've heard that, you know, things about the WordPress code base. And it's kind of, and it's also been around for so long, you know, whereas like Tumblr, I don't know when Tumblr was created, but it's more of a product of like the sort of Web 2.0 era of digital media. So
God, I don't even know what number they are. WordPress is they're both 2.0 in the sense that okay, I don't actually remember the technical, sorry. Yeah, like as someone who I don't know why, but for a fairly extensive period of my life, like I was a registered WordPress developer, and I showed up to the weekly Slack meeting of WordPress developers. And I literally thinking back now, I think mostly because this is almost cruel to say. Like it is cruel. I think I like watching just, you know, plugging holes in the dam with I remember what that phrase, like with your fingers, right? But now like all of a sudden it's actually really, when you realize that it's just a bunch of people doing work for free to sustain this massive software as a service company is probably what defines WordPress. A funny anecdote about the Trump presidency is that so the White House website and a lot of the web presence of the federal government ran on Drupal for a long time, and like Drupal is an ancient but incredibly robust content management system that's like, it's really like perfect for that sort of thing. Like it's not complicated. It's like visually it's very feature limited. But it is very secure, right? And the Trump guy was like, fuck this, we're putting everything on WordPress. And that almost certainly means that they became a client of WordPress VIP, as in the federal government, as in God, my government became what I assume to be the biggest client of the WordPress VIP program, and no one talks about this, and it would have been a huge cash flow thing for WordPress as an organization.
That's
which might explain why they bought
hilarious.
Tumblr.
Yeah, I never even thought about that. Yeah, no, I know all about the like the federal government like literally runs on Drupal. It's hilarious because I used to live in DC, and that's kind of where I started my development career. And like you can just like be a WordPress or Drupal developer in DC and like go forever because there's so much demand for that skill set there. Because like every fucking government contractor like uses that. But that's really funny about the Trump thing, and it doesn't surprise me because like given how many of the right wing social apps have had like huge security like fiascos like very publicly. It's and you know WordPress being known for like not being the most secure. That doesn't surprise me at all.
It's actually incredibly secure if you keep it updated at a ridiculous pace, and that's the problem when you realize, like philosophically, when you realize that they're just like the phrase spinning. I don't know any of these idioms. I'm sorry. I don't know why I haven't talked to people. I do not know the idiom. The gerbil, spinning the wheels, spinning the tires. That's basically what the entire development community does, is like patch this ridiculously ancient ship. Meanwhile, okay, so for instance, a good friend of mine who's Irish, like he found a way to make WordPress site generator, and it's genius. And the fact that like I probably could not, even if I could get the attention of companies that now run their huge businesses on WordPress still, like Condé Nast, The New Yorker, Wired, which I'm a subscriber to, but their website is unusable. So I've probably stayed a subscriber just so that I can justify occasionally DMing Ashley God, Feinberg, I think, and be like, hey, so your shit's still broken, right? Fuck, I am literally failing to find the like the news bit about when Automatic bought Tumblr. I guess it's probably because no one cares. I remember it being a huge thing. They did indeed buy it for $3 million. A lot of the editorializing is suggesting that Automatic could give Tumblr stability, which, yeah. Anyway.
See, I don't know. Just to me, like when Yahoo bought Tumblr, I was like, okay, it's over. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna be.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that too.
It's like hollowed out. You know what I mean? And I think also I was getting these persistent, like annoying ads for like shitty mobile games that it just drove me off the site. That and then my switch over to Twitter and like being more interested in like interacting with people like more directly.
Yeah.
That's like what kind of got me off the site. So I was like, I mean, apparently people still use it.
Yeah, it's extensively, definitely. But you'll never see it, and you can go on the app. I mean, I still have my old account that so actually, the very first web media thing that I ever tried to do, I started a car blog on Tumblr, and everyone was like, "Dude, you need to." My friends were like, single friend, who, like, I mean, God, we were 18, 19, it's whatever we aspire to be, it doesn't matter. But he was like, dude, you need to, like, you can't fucking have a blog on Tumblr. And I'm like, no, like, specifically, that is exactly what it's optimized for. But yeah, if you want to, see the disaster that I made, I would consider it a piece of internet history. Drywallmusic.tumblr.com is a thing that I automated back before automation. Like I signed the post by email address up for a bunch of spam lists, and I thought that was so funny because it was like, hey, my fucking Tumblr is just posting ads, and then now that's the whole internet now, and now I feel like anyway.
Yeah, we should all like share the links to our Tumblrs.
You know, if this were
that's great.
Periscope, which this space was built atop of, we could just do that. We could just post the links in a text chat.
Huh?
But there's no way to do that now notably without like fucking up everybody else, or like it's the big display thing. It has to be the host, the celebrity involved in the conversation.
Wait, can't people just make a tweet and share it? I mean, not that I'm recommending that, but how else would you say something in this chat? Can you write things into the
You
chat?
cannot. That was my
without
point. Is
posting
that
it?
I wish it had a chat. I've been wanting that because, like, I like to lurk. I don't like to actually talk on these things.
I like bullying Alice into talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, so notably, this was built atop of Periscope, which, yes, did have text chat, and a lot of other things. And it was literally cannibalized to build this. And the decision...
I know, and it seemed perfectly functional.
Yeah.
And then they, like, just ported it into this terrible app that today at least is somewhat functional and isn't draining my battery at like 1 or 2% a minute, and is also working with my Bluetooth headphones, which it never worked. Like, oddly, that's the strangest thing. Like, it would work while I was listening, but if I became a speaker, the Bluetooth headphones would crap out. And it's like, how have you managed to ruin this interface where, in theory, it should have absolutely to do with the specifics of the application, and just as long as you're communicating to the operating system properly, the operating system should be handling the Bluetooth.
Well, that's the thing. It's almost certainly on the OS's side, especially if it's iOS.
Really?
Yeah.
But it worked for everything else. So, like, it has to be, like, it was working fine with other applications.
Yeah, but, like, yeah. I only just this year have learned actual specifics about how iOS is built. But honestly, like, the blame, truthfully, almost certainly rests upon one, like, line, one error, or I'm sorry, one incorrect, that's the word, value somewhere in, I think it's called, let's see, it would be called core audio, and then it's Bluetooth is the set of stuff that I can't think of the name. Sorry. Apple has names for everything that just obfuscate what's actually happening. But yeah, there are like a bunch of different options to do things in the operating system because they don't like take the time to deprecate old things properly. So yeah, everybody's confused, and like it always seems like it's this big that would be really like, it is almost certainly simple to fix. But yeah, trust me, I have lost my mind over things like this. For instance, I just found out this is one interesting anecdote that I uniquely have, and then I'll shut up about that. I found out the name of Siri Voice 2. If you maybe recall, when the new Siri voices were introduced earlier this year, Apple was like, we're gonna make them like non-binary. And like I was like, oh, that's actually wow, that's a very like relevant thing. I wonder what they're gonna sound like. Not only are they clearly binary, a black man and a black woman. It's clearly a black man and a black woman. I found the name of one of them accidentally in a document today, or not a document, in a piece of data. And I really want to tell people, but then I realized that would technically be dead naming Siri, which is the most absurd conundrum to be in ever. But yeah, little things are almost certainly what's the problem. The craziest part about this whole story is that K4, who's the head of product now at Twitter, he only came to Twitter as part of Periscope. He was a very ideological software developer, they were very innovative. Periscope is an amazing thing for like both technically and the way it was organized. But he went from calling Periscope his baby and saying that it was like the thing he was going to do with his life in interviews when Twitter bought Periscope. He's ended up being the head of product that made the decision to, instead of like, I don't know, at all reasonably deprecating Periscope and like keeping people there to respond, keeping at least one person there to respond to people, he just, from what I can tell, scalped the whole team like a year ago, and built this on top of it, except this is distinctly less reliable than Periscope was.
Yeah, I don't know very much about Periscope, and I never really used it, but it seems like Twitter has a really weird history with like video shit, like having killed Vine and then Periscope. I mean, I assume that like all things in tech, it's like they're probably like, we can't justify this from a business perspective for like whatever reason. But I don't know,
Yeah,
I don't have
unfortunately,
any like insight into why that was, or because it's like reportedly they regret killing Vine, like as they should, and then, TikTok came along and I guess did what they were trying to do much better. But yeah, I'm not sure like what their deal is with regard to company trying and then like killing various like video products.
yeah. Well, I mean, Vine was very, very different in that was a cultural failure. As in like scandalous, and like that was not a technical failure. But yeah, they are similar in that both of them were like built more or less from scratch. That's really a stretch to say that, but like they were very clever things that someone built in a technical sense. Periscope still had a very active community. I said too much about it, or it's like the only application that I have ever been I had more of an active following engagement on Periscope than I ever will in any other social media service. And that's not actually the reason why I can't stop bringing it up. It's that Periscope had maintained an active community. It was a business thing in the sense, but like Periscope was never profitable. And would have made sense for them to say, like, look, guys, this was great. It was a great time. I see that you guys are still on it. But like, we're gonna have to start spinning it down. We are going to stop updating the app. They said that, but they said that like literally like at least 18 months after they actually stopped updating it. And like make it very clear and have a distinct timeline of slowdown. But it was, I don't know, you guys, this is probably not very interesting. I'm sorry. Please stop me if it's not. Periscope is like, we complain about filter bubbles. There's one last thing I want to say about Periscope. Periscope, just by its fundamental design and nature, was it was, you could not have a filter bubble on Periscope. That just was not possible. And the sad thing is, or at least the hypocritical thing, overwhelmingly, and to my, but I also participated in this, but it's because it was so positive in the sense that you could just hop on Periscope and all of a sudden I'm talking to someone in Georgia, the country, who's learning English, and I think it would be cool to just have a brief conversation about what my favorite color is. And then maybe never see them again. But like, and you could just pop in, have that experience, and then pop out. Yeah, let me.
That sounds almost a bit like chat roulette and like those types
Yeah,
of
except the
things.
difference is that you had control. Like, you distinctly had. Sorry, to cut you off, but like, obviously, I'm very passionate about this. It was literally a globe, and you could just see. You could scroll around the globe and see little red pins of someone live, and then you could tap on that, and there would be a title, and you could go in and you could text chat with them.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that reminds me a bit of like, I know like Snapchat has a feature a little bit but like that, but it's more about like obviously viewing people's stories, and like it's heavily like sort of weighted towards people that you know already know, and then like
and it's not in real time.
brands and shit that have like already. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I should have. Yeah, I never really got into Periscope from a distance. My impression was that it was like a lot of just like random cranks, because I know there's like various right wingers that would like like be on it a lot, which of course can be fun, but like I don't know.
Yeah, that, as someone who was actually pretty popular on Periscope, I literally never had that experience. And I've basically have been trying to figure out why. Like, there would be trolls, but like, I just made it very clear that well, actually, Periscope, the software, did a pretty good job of moderating. Actually, probably better than anything else right now. But like, if anyone said, like, the rule was you can disparage me as much as you want, as long as you don't, but you cannot disparage anyone else in the chat. You cannot be anything but positive to anyone else in the chat. And like, maintaining that simple rule, maybe total, in my time on Periscope, I had to kick 30 people. And that's what I'm just like, what the fuck? However,
But I
in the
mean, how
last
many
day
people actually used it though? Because I feel like part of it is just like once you have a community of users that gets to a certain scale, the moderation just becomes like, exponentially more challenging.
well, I mean, they actually I'm trying to think of. So, they had very innovative ideas about moderation that at least might be surprising, given that no one else has done it. So, one thing that you could do is you could you could nominate moderators for your chat. And basically the role for them was not to, they weren't like, so yeah, I had regular friends, I would make them moderators. But all that meant is that if the software was confused about something, it would ask them before the message was posted. Before the message was posted, that's the important thing. So like, in my that's the most ingenious solution to that problem that I have personally ever seen. In that it actually works. But yeah, you're right. I was actually so there were a lot of Periscope users up until the end. But the thing about Periscope is that is distinctly like a non-attachment social service. Because they didn't really get around to there were financial systems in Periscope. Oh, this is a whole other thing. Like talking about how Twitter can't actually implement payment systems on Periscope. There was a program that you could get paid in real time, sort of like the way Twitch does it now, but like in my opinion, in a much more understandable way. And then were people getting paid? Not a lot. And that's why, like, because it was everything that we claim, at least in criticism of the modern or of other social services, it was everything that we claim to want. That's my point. And I'm including myself in this. I realized that the reason, like, why I didn't open Periscope as much as I felt like I should was literally because it was just a completely positive experience. And my brain was not, I left it on my home screen for years. Like, literally, it was on my home screen for the entire history that it existed. First home screen. And I just rarely found myself popping in. And when I did, it was always great. But like, I don't know. I just like this conversation about Periscope specifically, in my opinion, just got completely overlooked. And I really haven't. But I think the only reason why is just because like the articulate critics that reflect on general implications of media as it's changing. Specifically, Gia Tolentino. I wish Gia Tolentino had been on Periscope so that she could. So that she could talk, it would be so much more eloquent. But yeah,
No,
I said I was going to
think you
stop.
should write this piece. I think you should write this piece that like, hey, we all slept on Periscope. It was good actually. Like
Yeah,
I would click on that headline.
No, it's going to be really big and it's going to be really reflectory. And I want to actually talk to the people that I met on Periscope. There's so many like ridiculously good stories. So many experiences that I don't know if I like specifically to differentiate this. I cannot use an application like TikTok because, well, I guess now I feel like I'm a control freak, but like because I grew so accustomed to having control over my consumption of content generally on the web. And TikTok literally exists. It is the polar opposite of control.
Yeah, you're just like spoon-fed video after video, and it very closely measures your reaction to it. I mean, it creeps me the fuck out. Like, I can't ever be on it for more than like a minute because I just feel like I'm losing my mind, and I feel like everybody talks about the TikTok algorithm as if it were sentient, and like it creeps me out.
Yeah. It's
like,
much
I don't
less
want
sexy
that.
than that,
like,
though.
I don't
It's
want
actually
a relationship like that in my life with an algorithm.
So the problem it's much less sexy. It is not sentient. It's not anywhere close. It's not. It just happens to be really competent. And the reason why is because of a specific implementation of God, I don't even know. I'm beyond in jargon, but it's like very, very specific information gathered about how you move a video on the screen, about your actual scrolling. That I found out this advantage, like that was basically the definitive advantage of TikTok recently because I read like an entire academic paper for like the first time in years, like from cover to cover.
Yeah, there was a good, I think Reply All, the podcast did a good episode about it recently, and there was like, and then they had somebody on who also wrote a good essay about it that I've skimmed but haven't like read in depth. But I think a lot of the takeaways was, like it really is good at closely monitoring exactly how you interact with the content that it puts in front of you. And it obviously has total control over your attention because it's this like endless stream of things, like kind of.
No, it's designed to have you opt in. It's not sorry, but like this really frustrates me because I know that we want to go to it being this big dark story. I actually spent a lot of my time writing what I thought was going to be an original academic paper criticizing Facebook, but not the business, not the company, not whatever, not the culture. Literally, just the way that the Big Blue website, facebook.com, is designed to, instead of being a tool, it just do around. But anyway, and everyone, anytime I talked about it, and I know it's well-meaning and I appreciate being listened to, but people would come in and be like, "Oh, dark patterns, bro." Like,
yeah, no, I'm not saying that I think TikTok is a dark pattern. I don't. In fact, I think like there's a lot of ingenuity. Like the first time I downloaded and opened the app, I was like, God damn, they've really like thought through all this shit that, is very hard to do, like making a complex kind of little video editor that, offers people just enough creativity and stuff like that. Like they really, really have a lot of impressive like UX design baked into it. And I think that that's a lot of the reason for its success. So I'm not like saying it in a like Big Brother way. I'm saying that like there's so much thought that's been put into that design that it really enables it to work in a way that like the fucking YouTube algorithm doesn't, because it always comes back to like, how would you like to watch a Jordan Peterson video or whatever? And on TikTok, somehow it seems like this much more organic feedback loop of like what you're actually interested in, and this like more like kind of more give and take interaction between the person and the content.
It's designed not to be a platform for you to consume what you want. It's designed to determine along with you what you want. And that's like, so the big difference that I was trying to get to is that it's all about having trying to think of the volition in your consumption of social media. That's the overwhelming difference that I see in these things, and it's very small. For instance, I kept up with like 25, 30 YouTubers, the same set, actively. It was easy to keep up with those people for years because subscriptions were straightforward and there were the recommendations on YouTube were not extensive and pervading. And now when I go on YouTube, I have no way. This is difficult to describe. It's not a piece of software for me to go find the thing that I knew I wanted to watch. It's designed to throw shit at me, and that's so significant because
and that's very purposeful. Like I feel like it's a certain level too of just visual junk, like when I look at YouTube, and it was the same thing with Tumblr with like the ads and stuff like that. I'm like, there's just too much junk everywhere, like things that I don't want to pay attention to that are vying for my attention. So yeah, it's definitely like a lot less. Yeah, it's definitely a lot less easy to like curate your experience in a more controlled way.
Well, the way that the way that the big takeaway, I guess, that I don't know, Gio would probably say, is basically all the reason why these things have changed is they've gotten good at being businesses. And the common denominator among all of the processes that I've talked about as being more controllable and more optimal, better places, the universal truth is that none of them were making money. Except for a few very rare organizations, like Bandcamp is an exception. Notably, a single exception. I spent a whole year of my life writing about that, trying to find basically trying to find out why they seem to be I don't want to say they haven't fucked up at all. And when they do, they immediately talk about it and take action. And not only that, do they correct their mistakes? Oh God, I'm not going to start on this. Sorry, but they're thoughtful about how they have foresight into how they want to design their business going forward. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, they seem unlike, like, in contrast to other platforms built specifically for musicians, that their main goal is to actually create kind of like good incentives between their business and the musicians. Like,
you basically got what it took me a year to say. Right there. Yeah. So like
yeah. It's basically like when the musicians do well, we do well. You know what I mean? So it's like that incentive structure versus like Spotify, which is just like, we'll give you a fraction of a
I didn't even have to say it
for whatever. So and yeah, so like you don't make any money unless you're fucking like Beyonce or whatever, who doesn't need more money. Yeah.
Okay, so the thing about Spotify that I'll just say one thing. That element, yes, is problematic, but that's kind of the problem with Spotify distinctly is how much they invest in their narrative being a place to discover music. So I forget the metric. I should literally just have it like, I don't know, in a shortcut on my phone right now, or by now. Let's see, I believe it is like 99% of the bandwidth. No, I'm not even gonna try. It's in a post somewhere that I've posted, but basically, Spotify is the opposite of a place to discover music. And yet they, more than any other service, like literally go to the App Store right now. The last time I checked, it's literally like the app name is Spotify. Discover something. Yeah, I'll shut up about that though. Does anyone want to talk about something non-media industry related / hear from someone other than me?
Or me. I mean, this is interesting though. Like, this is the first space I've joined where I've actually felt like I've had like a meaningful dialogue with somebody that I've like never talked to before.
This is how it used to be all the time on Twitter. That was the distinct thing about Twitter. But yeah, I'm so glad that you said that, and that I could maybe like haphazardly provide that, because that is the only reason that so like once you've used social media as much as I have, well, actually I probably should have come to this conclusion a long time ago. I'm a 27-year-old man. But I just realized recently that I should be intentional about adding value to other people's lives. And that should be my main goal on social media, because there's literally, professionally, there's no other reason, like reasonable reason. Oh, thank you for listening, Aster. I really, I like that you have the word internet archaeologist in your title, specifically because I've been calling myself a software historian for a long time.
I saw that. I think that might be why I followed you. I don't remember really how I your account, but it was sometime in May is what I managed to narrow it down to.
Well,
yeah.
I have to say, I can't follow you back.
So is this obviously like no pressure to, but do you have this like weird ratio thing and you're still below the ratio? That's so funny.
So
we just should do a campaign to get you a lot more follows so that you can
No. The real campaign, the real energy, positive energy to be invested is to get everyone on this. There's this alternative social media service that saying the name, unfortunately, is poison now. I should say, all the things that I've lamented so far just aren't present on Mastodon. And the only reason that I'm still here, I've been on Mastodon for, I got the very first interview of the guy who made it. It was a big deal back then. Like I've been on Mastodon since 2017, and it's again kind of like the Periscope thing where like every time I go on there, it's like 100% positive, and like the only reason I'm still here is because I have been completely ineffective at convincing. Okay, this is not the only reason. There's clearly other reasons. But like I cannot get any of my friends to move. And when I say move, it's not actually something you have to pick up and move. It's very there's like a process that we transition or not to Mastodon. But yeah, I think I'm gonna die before
before you leave Twitter. I've sort of come to the same conclusion, even though I feel like I've gone through many phases where I'm like, maybe I should just like log off this app forever.
Well, okay. You really should try Mastodon, because for one thing, there's no consequences. You have nothing to lose. But I found what I've been trying to center on is something that sentence that I came across. So Mastodon is like Twitter, except imagine Twitter, but if it were built primarily to be good at what it does. So if Twitter were built primarily to be a good social media software. Mastodon is still a for-profit business. Like the software is open source, but like the network is pretty much under.
How many people use it though? Because I feel like it's like you have to hit this critical mass of adoption, and unfortunately, like I feel like that's something that's not always like
I can tell you
easy
that,
to achieve.
I could very, very easily right now on my timeline in Mastodon, like I've got plenty of very interesting people to there are enough. Trust me. It's actually that's an issue that they just put out their quote unquote official iOS app, which is just a very, very cute and thoughtful little social client. So I spent most of the first part of this year writing about literally writing an app guide for Mastodon iOS apps. I thought it was going to take me like a day, and it took me like 4 months. But yeah. So I know that Mastodon, for whatever reason, I'm pretty sure it's that same thing with Periscope, where it's literally like, because it's just good. And when I say good, I mean from a technical standpoint, overwhelmingly yes, but it's not just the software, it's the ideas around moderation, notably. And I think that they find, like, Eugen, the guys who created it, it's like he came to the conclusion that I have been with the control thing a long time ago. If you go to Mastodon, join mastodon.org, it says social media back in your hands, which sounds like a platitude, right? Except that's literally the difference. It's just it is actively built and iterated and maintained on to try to give people and communities and individual people as many different like powerful ways of controlling their social media experience. And that sounds like, I don't know, big like nuclear. It's literally down to just no algorithms, which distinctly are that is, as a species, we're going to look back on this time and with great confusion when we realize that algorithms really are as random and incoherent as science fiction thought they were. And it's the open source thing kind of helps in that it's completely transparent. And God, even saying that word,
I just downloaded the app, and now it's like prompting me to join servers. How would you compare Mastodon to like Discord? Because Discord is another thing that I really didn't using until like the past like year and a half, like COVID. And similar to what you've described with like Periscope and Mastodon, I found it to be so pleasant because, it's just communities mostly of people who I actually know, or they're based on like meaningful interest of things that I spend a lot of time like thinking and like talking and reading about.
And the policy decisions are in the hands of the community as opposed to the platform. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've been like, and every time I go on it, I'm like, man, why don't I spend more time on here than Twitter? But somehow I don't change my habits. And it's maybe just because like people want bad shit like some of the time, I don't know.
Yeah. Discord originally started, and this is actually another God, it seems like I really think I'm some sort of proto maybe I am actually a proto authority on social media of all things. But so I actually I launched an independent media company entirely on Discord in 2016, sorry. I was a beta tester, not that that was really significant, other than it hasn't fucking changed significantly, except for yeah, Discord, it's like back then it was, for one thing, like the gamer thing is not a restriction like some people frame it as, but it also is a part of the identity, and that Discord was designed to basically like be a modern solution to all the ancient ass shit that we had to use in order to each other while playing video games. It was literally before Discord, immediately before Discord, it was, you had to have a Ventrilo or TeamSpeak server, which were like those were things you had to pay for unless you like were part of an organization that had them. And IRC was the chat. Like it was a bunch of disparate things. And so Discord seemed like such a magic thing because it was actually, so this is another thing that is not clear in my opinion anymore. Discord was originally like browser, it was designed to be used in the browser exclusively. And I'm sorry, I won't go like, but the important thing that no one remembers about Discord that was behind, like, decided to start a little media project on it is because so in Discord I could set up a audio chat room. I could generate a URL that would invite someone, anyone. Let's say I'm interviewing, I don't know, one of the Tuskegee Airmen. So an AN, and but it has to be, over the internet. So how the fuck am I going to do that in a way that's not complicated for him? And like, so it was one link, and if you configured it, someone could click on that, not have to make an account. All they would have to do is confirm microphone and speaker access in their browser, and then they could just start talking in that audio room. And this is very specific, but it is still worth mentioning. And the bit rate, there was nowhere else where anywhere on the internet where you could get half the quality of that audio interaction. You could probably imagine like what an advantage that would be if I'm interviewing people over the internet, right? Like, and
I used to like I used to write and like report like in my former life and career. And I would be on my phone, like putting it on speakerphone and then like trying to record it on like GarageBand on my laptop. And like that did not work very well. But I think what Discord really nails a lot is the permission stuff and like ease of like configuring a lot of that stuff. And I think it helps too that their initial audience was gamers because they're not scared of that type of thing. You know what I mean? Whereas I feel like a lot of other apps, it's like, oh yeah, we could, offer people a lot more like, custom with, all these settings and permissions and roles and all that stuff. But like, nobody's going to want that or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, there's like rarely like a business case for that,
Slack and Discord,
yeah,
were and are basically identical, except for some authentication shit. And the fact that like the only reason no one could like see that was because Discord called themselves a gamer thing and Slack called themselves a work thing. That dynamic drove me so nuts for so long. It's probably not actually significant, but God.
Yeah, I mean, Slack itself came out of a gaming company. Like it was created by accident. It was like
Did it? I did not know that.
Yeah, so it was a tool that I think people created in-house at there was like a little like indie gaming studio and a better tool for like working, together. And I think that's a lot of the reason why Slack initially took off with like tech companies too, is because like it's a really useful tool if you're like collaborating on code, like versus, I don't know, like fucking email or like, I don't know what people used like in the pre-Slack era. Yeah.
There are still open source, like, okay, the reason why I'll never actually be friends with the Linux guys and the open source guys, even though, like, I should be able to integrate with that community. Well, it is just privacy, and then I don't care about it silly to get a step. But, like, they still insist upon IRC. I don't know if you know, like, if
I know about IRC. I've never used it. It was, like, sort of, I don't know.
Just before?
Yeah. But I mean, I've heard people say things like, "Oh yeah, Slack is just like a like repurposed IRC, with like fancier UI and stuff like that." I have a good
Anyone
friend
who says that did not use IRC because these things were the notable saviors of anyone who's stuck with IRC. Like that's but okay, so compare. No, Mastodon is not like Discord. In this, I guess you could kind of say maybe it is sort of like the chronological timeline equivalent, public chronological timeline equivalent of Discord. It's much less complicated. Like I spent the vast majority of this year, really, I invested a lot of time in writing my Mastodon. I've in trying to figure out a way, like the way to articulate the truth about it. Because what I was gonna say is, you don't even have to worry about all the shit that people are going to start talking about when you ask them about Mastodon. All the ideological shit you don't actually need to know anything about it. The simple, unsaid truth is that it's just a better experience. I do not give a single shit about privacy. I am a very superficial person, like a very bitchy, superficial person. I like things that like treat me well. Like I said, when I talked about Tweetbot, like it literally pampers me. And like, yeah, that's how Mastodon feels. It's just if
Yeah. So okay. So which servers should I join?
Mastodon.social,
Okay.
because that's our server. So
And do they use, is server like, it's interesting, this nomenclature that's popped up, because that's another thing that Discord uses. You know.
So yeah, and it's actually that's the conversation that this would lead us down is so much more simple. Federation and decentralization in terms of how they are manifested in Mastodon are so much less complicated than I don't know, anyone assumes. Okay, so I like the sort of abstracts that are that you need to be able, you know, to identify, to understand it, how it works. I am not good at that. Like I've never been that sort of person, and like I still do not I cannot look at code and understand what's happening, and I've just had to accept that, and I've spent a lot of time trying. But you don't need to. It's literally just again, I guess I've spent all this time. I've still failed. So why I said Mastodon.social, and that would be a very controversial thing if another Mastodon ideological user were overhearing me say that to you, and just do Mastodon.social, because they'd be like, oh, it's about certain choice. Yes, except the thing that people, the biggest issue, in my opinion, is that people talk about joining these things as if there's some big risk. Every single, so the like one of the popular servers that you'll see has banned, like, has competently banned Nazi content, child porn, and when it happens, the swiftness with which they come down, like maybe someday to the story about Gab, should really sell everyone on this, quote unquote sell. Capitalism's a real problem, but so, it's not like if you just join Mastodon.social.
Looking at it, and it says some ground rules, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no racism, sexism, blah, 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 no harassment. And then the fifth one is no content illegal in Germany.
Yeah, that's because,
it's really fucking funny. Does Germany have like special social media rules or something?
They do, notably, and they're actually very interesting. Germany does not have any of the problems that the United States has because of what some people in the United States might call, they don't have the freedom of speech. However, it's such an advantage. Anyway, I'm not
the free speech
Eugen
thing
Rojko,
is
who is the Eugen's the guy. I'm still the only person to date who has interviewed him as an actual person. Even though my interview was pretty bad. But it was way back in 2017. He's a guy. He's a software developer, young man. Who lives in Germany, and from like a legal perspective, he is basically solely, like, legally responsible. He is the business of Mastodon. Of course, with that, really, he's got a Patreon, and like he works with people to make a good social media service. And that's the gist. So like the reason why Mastodon.social in particular has that, and is because Mastodon.social is, quote unquote, the main server. You can think of it that way. It's really just the one that Eugen started with. My primary account is on Mastodon.social, and it has been for years. The reason why I tell you as a new user to go there specifically is because of something called cross-posting, which is, in my opinion, the best way to start on Mastodon. There's it will take you 2 seconds and is very configurable. You can make it so that anytime you tweet, that tweet will be posted on Mastodon.social.
Cool. Yeah, I feel like I knew about this.
And for most people, at least, I still have not had the opportunity to put this to the test. I think they should do it how I did it, which is basically I set up cross-posting, and then I kind of fucking forgot about Mastodon. And then when I remembered and I came back, there had been a bunch of engagement, as in like human engagement, not like, actual humans had engaged with the content that had been posted there, even though it was clear that it was coming from Twitter. So why I said this, Mastodon.online is like, I guess that's the only other destination I have in terms of Mastodon, and it just does not allow cross-posting. So. Oh, you totally did not need to know about that. That was...
No, it's interesting. I'm just like clicking around on it now, and I see the similarities between Twitter, but it also, like clearly there's like
it's like Twitter,
more
but
going on,
if it were built to be like it,
like
so there,
not shitty.
yeah. You know what? Fucking, I've talked about it enough. No, something I want you to know. If you don't like the way the quote unquote official Mastodon app is, there are literally over a dozen actively maintained, somehow each unique clients for Mastodon on iOS specifically. Basically, like,
Yeah, they let developers actually like
well, you just have a
do
choice.
what they want with it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool. What's your Mastodon?
So,
I don't have any followers or anybody I'm following, so I have to start somewhere.
If you search Dave Blue in the search field in Mastodon, I think what happens is like this overwhelming cacophony of accounts from across the Fediverse that I should not have set up. But let's see. So the way to get there is to go to mastodon.social/@ the @ symbol David Blue. So it's just like Twitter, like me being on Twitter at David Blue, except there's an @ symbol in there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I found you.
And then when you get there, it will do this weird thing where it
will... whoa, it still has stars. Dude, this is like old school Twitter.
Yeah. This is literally the first time what the fuck is happening? I've just on my blog that works incredibly well all the time, and it's not. What the fuck is actually happening right now?
So I was looking at, instead of faving tweets with hearts, they still have stars.
Yes. And okay, so that's like a thing. Just thinking about it, the word like as in liking something, the verb liking something makes so much more sense, like than saying I favorite, right? Because basically, if you're like me, you just favorite everything, and if everything's your favorite.
Yeah. No, I when I first started using Twitter, I really assumed that faving was like bookmarking. And I'm like, oh yeah, these are tweets that I'll want to save and like look back on. You know what I mean? Like to me, starring something, and like usually just in the context of modern user interfaces, like starring is like a kind of bookmarking, you know?
Yeah.
But in this app, it's like more akin to liking. And then I like almost every fucking tweet I see. So now I have like, how many likes do I have? Oh, it won't tell me anymore. That sucks. But it's at least not on iOS. But I have like a very embarrassing amount of likes on Twitter.
You cannot. Sorry, I'm just figuring out how to feature this tweet. Oh, it's my pinned tweet. This is like visually at least interesting. You can ignore all the editorialization. I don't know why anyone else isn't freaking out about this. I don't understand why the developers don't feel, because they're anyway. Yeah, so you should not feel guilty, at least compared to someone like me. I have multiple systems of archiving and automation that I've lost track of, that every time I favorite something on Twitter, they some of them just save the link, some of them save a screenshot, and I've just forgotten about those things. So don't worry, don't ever feel embarrassed about the amount of curation that you've done, because I guarantee you there's actually a lot of people like that set up those things.
Yeah, but for me, it's like I've like physically liked like that many tweets.
Yeah,
which is fine. Like, I mean, it's like
that's
like for a while. I guess like for a while. I forget. I don't know what Twitter was trying to do. Again, like you never really know. But there were a few weeks where I couldn't like anything because I think there had been probably some code change that.
Are you sure it was a few weeks and not like maybe a day, and then immediately happened very like much? Okay, so
yeah, but yeah, it's like they'd obviously made some code change that's like that would like almost like rate limit your liking.
That has been in place. It was originally called Twitter Jail. Sorry. I am someone who, for a long time, this is going to be difficult to. I'm sorry. No, that's not correct. Twitter Jail is referring to when you post too much.
Yeah.
Which is something when I got home.
Or when you get like sort of banned or whatever, or somebody who's like reporting your tweets because they're like, dipshits or whatever.
Yeah, I have no idea. Considering that none of those processes will ever be. I've tried to actively prevent myself from speculating about proprietary software. This is something I've tried to do for my own wellness, and I've failed and continue to fail. But yeah, so like you probably hit the like limit and then something about it. Okay, like I don't know. I've probably already communicated this by now. It was probably an unintentional change, or at least a change that was implemented and was not designed to do that at all. And like people, I used to be the person that was like, oh, maybe Twitter is doing this for this reason. No, I've looked at the shit. I've looked at the documentation. I've looked at the history over time. Nothing. Okay, for instance, have you heard the voice transformer thing yet? Do you have that in Spaces?
No.
Okay, here we go. They implemented this instead of making Spaces a reliable.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's really terrible. I hate it.
And so they mentioned it once, and it is not clear to whom they give it to. Just imagine if I don't know. Mastodon is basically like every single thing like the public. The decisions are made publicly. Not necessarily in a democratic way, but like every single change is documented. And it's not like even like to be transparent. It's just we made the documentation, so it might as well be public.
Right.
And like the reason why my bio says docs bitch is because like
yeah, you've brought up documentation a lot, which is cool. Like
there's a reason for that, and it's because it stopped being done. Literally, like I don't care. I never cared about it before. Like yeah, I guess if I ever had made a piece of software, which will never happen, it would probably be like mediocre to poorly documented.
The thing about documentation, like having been in, like no company does it well. Like at least that I've heard of yet or worked at. I mean,
so
maybe
saying that implies that like they have. Okay, I'm sorry. That's a defeatist thing to say. They just don't do it well.
It totally is, but it's like informed by my experience of like U.S. tech and media companies who, by and large, like don't have to give a shit about it.
And that's the problem, and that's the reason why docs bitch is in my bio, and that's the reason why I'm sweating talking about it. Literally, my life project, and this is ridiculous, okay? My main project right now, it feels like God's calling in the way that my family talks about. So the iPhone has been able to be used with a Bluetooth keyboard since 2011. I did so. I chose to, instead of getting a new laptop, going to community college, I got an iPhone 4 and a Bluetooth keyboard. And I never stopped. And Apple, I mean, if you really actually found it interesting, you could just go through. My timeline is just me trying to very nicely get Apple to, in some instances, like acknowledge that it is a thing. And not just Apple, but developers too. I should really ban that as a topic, but it's on the documentation thing. It's literally, I'm talking about tables of keyboard shortcuts. That exist somewhere, definitely. Especially because so keyboard shortcuts for Bluetooth keyboards, as in, I can go in Tweetbot, I can hit Command, comma, and that opens the settings menu in Tweetbot, et cetera, et cetera.
This is like using you're using a Bluetooth, a wireless keyboard to navigate an iPhone.
Yes.
Okay. See, that's probably unusual. I bet not a lot of that. And again, and this is like how, a lot of software winds up being like horrible in terms of like accessibility and stuff like that, is because where like companies will be like, oh, we don't have the like quote unquote resources to care about this small fraction of user that like uses keyboards or screen readers to navigate or whatever, and then it's like, well, we don't have to care about them for business reasons, so like we can just continue to like marginalize these people.
Yeah, and that's normal. I mean, honestly, for most other situations, other than the most valuable company in the history of the world, I have excused it. But like, okay, this has literally made me, I've been ostracized because of this idea that there is no exception. It is absolutely unacceptable. And what I was about to say, to give you, what I'm actually talking about are literally, think of a table, like an Excel spreadsheet, just two columns. On one side is the actual command. So like, right, command, comma, and then in the other column is what that command does. And suggesting, so like Apple's native apps all have keyboard shortcuts. God, I'm telling the story, but it is, in my opinion, like, again, I don't actually think that this is the end of the world. Oh yeah, what I was gonna say, no, not many people do this. And I like the distinction that I would like to make is believe it to be a fundamentally absurd, irrational thing to do, to spend a lot of time doing it, even though I do it. My reasons for doing so may be vaguely accessibility related, but I have discovered that the people who do, it is largely an accessibility concern, and they long ago, it's discovering how basically the blind and low vision community has completely given up on any sort of comprehensive support long ago. Like they write their own documentation. Incredible. But yeah, it's a good story. Unfortunately, I'm kind of to the point where literally like it's clear that I'm not going to get Apple to publish this documentation anywhere. And I say documentation again. We are literally talking about 2 columns, maybe a dozen rows for each of their let's see, 30 native iOS apps. Among those, I think maybe 17 or 18 have anywhere extensive support. I'm asking them to make those public, to make those commands public. That's it. And people literally, I was kicked out of a Discord server for asking how I could go about most productively responding to an Apple developer who in response to me being like, hey, so I know you guys are busy right now, but when you split off the iPad from the iPhone, it took all of the documentation of the keyboard shortcuts with it, and I know you're still developing on those. Where should I send users for documentation of your native app support of these shortcuts? And the guy was literally like, well, there shouldn't be any difference. And when I say the guy, they are all anonymized Apple developers, or Apple employees, which is utterly bizarre to me.
These are like on their help forums or
These are on their
whatever.
developer forums specifically.
Yeah.
And so his name is Frameworks Engineer. So for a while, actually, you know what I should do is I should automate it because I can. It probably wouldn't be that difficult to find every single public like frameworks engineer working for Apple right now that has a public Twitter account, and just like it is me being critical of the company, but like in the most minuscule way. Yeah. So I'll stop talking about it, but this is like, it's bordering on changed my life. And it's very difficult to explain to people that, of course, it's not actually about the fucking tables. It's about the innate, frankly, we're talking about little boys who don't want to put their laundry away. Instead they want to, play a video game, or like they can't set a Rubik's Cube down long enough to put out the house fire.
Yeah.
Except it's the most powerful companies in the world.
Yeah. But the reality of how those companies operate, like, having been on a couple engineering teams and like knowing people who are, is that like, a lot of people like they want better documentation, like even just for like internal usage and stuff like that. And people are passionate about it and will advocate for it. But if it's not something that matches like the business priorities, and it's not something that people are going to put money on, or even make somebody's job, make somebody accountable to it, then it's just not going to fucking happen.
Well, I think in notably every other case, that is not as like a justifiable dynamic. That is really not a big deal. It's specifically because of the level of excess that Apple.
Oh yeah, come on.
Like,
yeah,
if I were Apple,
like the amount of profit they make and the amount of money that like anybody who works there, like at least at that level, like probably makes.
It's a vanity thing for me, in my opinion. Like, if I were Apple, if I were Tim Cook, I would be utterly ashamed of the idea, or like if I found out that a feature that, I don't know, 5 people on Earth have been using, maybe a feature that wasn't even supposed to be there, that accidentally was there, I would immediately make sure that was resolved in some way, whether it be a removal, it would be like resolved and publicly addressed. And like,
well, it's clearly not the type of thing that like represents like a big risk to them in terms of like scandal.
And like the thing is, like, that's the reason why everything is crumbling, though, is because of basic.
Yeah. No, I know. Like most, and because like if you look at how, for instance, Facebook has operated and continues to operate in terms of like covering their asses, it's very much driven by, what has the potential to blow up in their faces in a big public way,
Yeah, but they're great at documentation, although, seeing it is not, like, for the technical side, they're great at documentation. And now, like, in a way that makes Twitter especially look absurd. Like that's going back to like Twitter's negligence specifically or whatever the fuck. It's yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to like not be emotional about this, but I have to also recognize that it is only because I'm not like it's because somehow this notion is confusing to people. And the more like that I get, maybe it is just me trying to articulate it in different ways, but just I'm not talking about a crusade. I'm just like, and I believe it to be in the best interest of all people. And the fact that I have had to say this many words about it, like I've said so many more to former Apple employees, to other people involved in the iOS community, and somehow every single time it ends up in like in people that I genuinely believe to be intelligent and honestly, at least somewhat self-aware in every other aspect of their like middle-class white guy, 40-something white guy affection for everything Apple does. And I've literally been kicked out because suggest for asking how I could be less disruptive in having this conversation.
That's funny.
And now I feel like
I
I'm
mean,
just
it's like
radicalizing.
just typical sort of like tone policing, and like I'm sure that like you mentioned, so like people who are blind or have like vision impairment. And the ways that like tech companies have failed them, like I think across the disability spectrum, like it's it's well known that like people don't like, first of all, like when you make things more accessible, when you do, it's like I forget what it's called, but I have only sort of skimmed the surface of like disability studies, but there's this concept in it that like if you make something that makes it something more accessible, like say like a ramp, or what are those sidewalk curves, like dips for wheelchairs or whatever, like if you make something that benefits disabled people, it'll eventually it will also benefit everybody. Like there's this like
in the most capitalist way too. In
yeah,
that, hey,
yeah.
now a bunch of fucking wealthy blind people can come into my store and waste a bunch of money. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So there's this concept, and it's like, but still, if you're somebody who gets a little bit like too passionate about it, as judged by sort of like what the norms are, which are going to be like around like people who are more neurotypical and like not disabled, then you will meet resistance, because I think people feel like they're being judged or whatever for and it's like
I get
they
it.
are, and it's but but it is a failure, and the least they can admit is that like that they're failing.
Yeah, well, it's like as someone who I should say I am entirely new to this conversation. I remember and I know that dynamic distinctly of anytime I just see the word accessibility being like, "Oh, I don't have to worry about that." And that has partially to do with like some of my family history. But so the element that kind of ties it together, what company is widely regarded by the accessibility community, in fact, as overwhelmingly better than everyone else in accessibility, is Apple. And that's true. If you actually
Yeah, I was actually I've recently been digging into the accessibility settings on my phone, and there are them, and it is like
I dare you
a
to
lot
get a
more
Bluetooth
than
keyboard out and turn on
typical
full
apps.
keyboard access
Yeah.
on your phone. I dare you to do that. I actually think, I don't know, I should start threatening people. God, if I had unlimited resources, my solution would not be to somehow get myself martyred over this. I don't know. I like the image of me tackling Tim Cook with a keyboard and my phone in my hand, and then like a bullet hole through the keyboard. This is the kind of thing that I spend time doing instead of actually just writing the fucking documentation. But
yeah, because that was going to be my next question, is like, in the absence of these types of things, what often winds up happening is communities are relied on to kind of make their own accessibility tools and resources, so I'm surprised that there isn't already like some page somebody's made that like has these things that you're wanting Apple to be.
Well, as someone who has been doing this and knowing that it's odd for a long time, like it was a very like low level frustration. What I've discovered is that, and what I'm trying to do very simply, is unify those of us that have come to this conclusion and collaborate. And like, I don't know how to be a community person, but I've accepted that if this is going to happen, it's going to be me. And it is like the one unique contribution that I can make. I hope. Basically, yeah, it's like the keyboard shortcuts are scattered. All of it, like I've found a lot of like the beginning of a project to document keyboard shortcuts for whatever. Oh my god, here's something that I've been doing. When an app supports keyboard shortcuts on iPhone, but there's a differentiation from the way it supports on iPad, what I do is I just write their documentation and email it to them. And I'm just like, hey, you don't have to acknowledge that I did this. You can just you don't have to put it up, but here it is. Because I don't, there's literally a thing that the system will do. It automatically generates these. That's the other thing that I should note is that iOS is very clever, particularly in that there's a menu. Someone developed a menu that the phone literally knows what the commands. It goes into its code and it makes the associations, and then it prints them in real time. And if that makes sense, this is something that completely boggled my mind because like every other sort of documentation like that, somebody, just knew and they wrote a static page or whatever. But yeah, the thing that I'm asking them to do is actually already automated.
Yeah, you mean they already have a system for like producing
the system does it. It does it itself in real. So like,
yeah.
if you have an iPad, this is the big thing. You can, and you pair a Bluetooth keyboard with it. You hold down the command key, and a guide pops up of shortcuts. And that's what I'm talking about, is that guide is actually generated by the system in that it recognizes in real time what the commands are associated with, as opposed to, written in the past by someone and it could be forgotten about and go out of date.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I know this is like not.
So it's like somewhat self-documenting. I mean, in that case, that means that like theoretically one should be able to write a program that would produce this documentation that you're looking for.
The program exists. And I mean, the output is somewhere in there. I don't even expect that. I would just like them to have that be publicly documented. Like I know that's what I'm saying. It is like the the myriad details in just how little I am like asking or suggesting of anyone in this, and it continues to get greater and greater as I go. It's like literally, when you were talking about businesses don't take the time, even if Apple wasn't, they've already taken the time for one thing. Someone was obviously invested in this and it just got deprecated. We're talking about, I don't know, and I really don't know that much about software development, but I can't imagine the most bureaucratic organization spending more than 12 man hours on doing this. I mean, again, it's not that many applications. I'm just talking about Apple's own apps. And this is like extreme to ask.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Let me ban this topic.
No, it's okay. It is something that is like kind of within my realm of interest. And it's interesting to hear about because I feel like it's hard to go up against these big tech companies. And a lot of times the ways that you have to do it are kind of not the more effective ways, often aren't just like directly asking them or reaching out or going through their like customer service or whatever, but actually just like shaming them on social media.
And that's what I do. Yeah.
And going negative, like basically getting the public pressure type of campaigns. And that will never happen from my because they react to that, like it's a question to them of PR strategy and brand control and all that shit. Like if they have a lot of people, tweeting at them or like posting stuff on like public platforms about shitty experiences or just generally like, hey, you're not doing well on accessibility and trying to cancel them for that. Like that, I mean, that does have an impact because again, like that's something that they care about. Like they want to look good in the eyes of the public and all that shit. So
yeah, I don't think, so notably, all of these dynamics, absolutely, I think you're 100% spot on. But I guess another consideration is that I actually am totally new to doing any sort of detailed shit with proprietary software. Like my entire experience up to this year was, and it wasn't extensive, but like my contributions and engagement and conversations were all about open source software. Almost in every case, not about like ideologically open source necessarily, and just the amount of problems that immediately don't exist. And I know there are a lot of problems that do come up. But for instance, like in cases like this specifically, if Apple was a tiny open source company, and the same thing was happening, even like they would just get back to me, and you know what they would probably say is like, "Oh shit, we didn't even mean to leave those in there. So what you've actually done is just get them removed. Or like maybe we'll remove them at some point, or be like, yeah, we're just not going to document it." Any sort of reply. That's the thing. Is it like it's the fact that like I don't know. Proprietary software is so fucking bizarre from my perspective, and like all of the implications, and I knew it was, but like it's so silly. It is so fucking silly, most of it. Especially when it is like in Apple's case, I don't know, it's a big fucking organization with a lot of considerations that I'm sure I'll never understand. But like when you're talking about things like Skype, okay, like I had a conversation with a Microsoft developer who was on the Skype team in 2021, and he was very, very hesitant to say anything about his job generally. And I'm like, dude, how the fuck? Okay, if I went,
well, people like have to sign NDAs and shit like that.
Okay, yes, but I understand. But I'm not talking about actually revealing anything. I'm not talking about breaking an NDA. I'm talking about his like. Okay, if I signed an NDA to like a regular proprietary NDA as a member of the Skype team, I would sign that. Like, I believe in that. Okay, like I understand the agreement. I'm accepting it. That's not. It's the mysticism around it, like the paranoia. That's like the most bizarre thing. Like,
Can you give me an example?
Like
what you think he could say hypothetically, but he was hesitant to.
That particular conversation, like it was so weird that I needed to stop real quick because he wasn't even. It was on a Twitter space, and he had come in, and I was also a guest, and I started off, just me joshing. I have weird ties.
We like joshing
to Microsoft, and their story specifically having been like an explicitly malicious organization that cost all of us so much. It cost the general abstract development of computing and software, and killed so many wonderful ideas for no other reason other than killing them, and like the ways that they've been reforming. So what I'm trying to say is I like Microsoft. That's a lot. I have a bias toward Microsoft. And
That's
even
an
with
odd
that
way of
bias,
saying
this
it.
guy was utterly put off by the idea by the suggestion that I would talk about it. And like, dude, okay, for one thing, he identified himself as a Microsoft employee on the Skype team. And like,
so what you're saying that what this person specifically didn't like was you like criticizing the software in any way, or
no,
like
okay, me continuing that me addressing he had introduced himself. Just be like, "Oh, hey, how's that going, man?" And that just didn't get it. Utterly put off by it. And then of course my reaction is to be like, I'm really trying to figure out like what's the actual cause, right? Like, does he just not want to fucking talk about it because of the time of day? Which that would be 100% understandable. It's I guess it really is like not addressing it or just acting like flaky. I really, without an actual transcript of this conversation, it wasn't very long. It was just so weird to me. And what I wanted to say was like, and this is a joke, but like if I went right now and leaked the entire source code of Skype, who would notice? And I know that like I'm not saying that that should be done or that wouldn't be even still it would be like the worst reason to get fired from but if there's like it's the what makes the paranoia, okay, is not it's when there are no enemies. Nobody is trying to get nobody's interested in the Skype source code. I'm not interested in hearing any actual details, right? I just want to chat. It's responding to just the most casual I don't know, communicate. Yeah, I guess I should not speak as if I know definitively what I'm saying, because it's what I'm really saying is that conversation was just infinitely confusing, and I just cannot understand and I want to understand why. It's like it's kind of an extreme example of something that I've encountered more broadly with software people. I don't know. Like I grew up on a farm. I live in the Midwest. I interned for quote unquote interned. It was more like babysitting for this company that like built the the original GPS so they're trucker people that built software that tracked trucks. 3 dudes in a little office. And like, I don't know. There was no paranoia involved in that, right?
Yeah, well, I think that like especially the rep that places like Apple being the worst of them have is being hyper secretive and
Well, I think in a lot of cases that is justified though.
yeah, to an extent that, but it's like they take it to like such a ridiculous extent. Like I remember that the ads person developer at the I don't know, like he would at my last place of work, he would always complain about having to work with Apple because of the like ridiculous sort of bureaucratic processes that you'd have to go through, and like the type of like they'd have to always have like a legal person like sitting in on their calls that were like pretty inconsequential calls between like not, you know, super powerful people or anything.
But wouldn't
like,
you though if you had the money? That's part of
yeah, I think it's because like these tech companies are all, you know, they're all sort of competing against each other to be like the one true whatever, like eye of Sauron that like owns it all and knows everything. But to some extent,
Why?
I see them as part of the same money anyway, because they all poach each other's talent and ideas, and you know what I mean? It's kind of like it's really stupid. It's just, you know, the form of capitalism that we happen to be living under right now.
Yeah. And yet the reason I've invested so much in this is because I distinctly, I don't know how to organize a society, but just in ways that I do know what the results that I can definitively speak on with authority, like the lack of Bluetooth keyboard shortcuts documentation. I'm just, I don't know. It's, I guess ultimately what I really am saying is that, it's insane. It is, okay. The original topic of conversation, iOS 15, is a more, I don't know, topical, less, it's a better topic, I guess. I don't know how much you guys know about it, but, I have basically decided that I'm going to, well, it's turned into me trying to find anything of significant value, or even worthy of mention for my family, as like representing like the majority of iPhone users specifically. Like Apple's a lot of things, but it's important to note that, you know, iPhone is 60% of their revenue still, and this is something that so iPad is a toy, right? Basically, I'm not saying that that's all it is, but it's like for most customers, most of those however many billions of people that own an iPhone, their phone is much more of a utility than it is a toy. As someone that has had an iPhone since the very first one and been the iPhone guy, like I am the guy who sees it as a toy, right? And it is absolutely unacceptable how much of their time and energy is being spent to make things for people like me specifically. Okay, let me be specific. So, in Apple Maps, coming on iPhone, there is now a beautiful, full, high frame rate, 3D like render of the whole Earth, and you can like move around it. It's better than Google Earth, okay? And you can do that, even in the in CarPlay view. And while they added that and spent time adding that, they did not add what has been overwhelmingly the most, like, at least, I've heard this over and over again. The speed limit thing doesn't appear unless you're getting directions. And if you know what I'm talking about, like when you're driving with a phone and it's paired to your infotainment system and your phone knows the speed limit of the road and it displays it,
I don't have a driver's license, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's and it is difficult as someone who cars were a very important part of my life, and then I lost my license. I'm on the tail end of that. I'm learning a lot about the rest of the world, but it's like just okay. The words that Craig Federighi began WWDC with. Clearly, I'm going. It's probably worth it. I don't know. Have you heard wind of the Safari controversy at all?
You'll have to be like a lot more specific.
No, because don't want to know.
Okay.
And it's impossible to describe. Where are you?
I mean, as a developer, Safari is definitely my enemy compared to other browsers. Like, it is the new IE.
So WebKit is the yeah. I mean, how am I failing to do this? Fuck. I'm like failing to navigate my word processing software. Clearly, I just cannot multitask in even the most.
Multitasking is fake. It's a lie. But yeah, what was your initial, like, what were you trying to figure out about, like, iOS 15 or whatever?
Okay, what I was trying to, my point is that basically none of it is relevant to the vast majority of iPhone users. And which wouldn't it literally would not be a problem if Apple was like, yeah, so iPhone is like, I know that like we've basically taken care of it as a phone, so we're just gonna continue down the direction of making it more delightful. But here's what they say. Still, I would actually quote, for many of us, our iPhone is becoming indispensable, and at the heart of iPhone is iOS. iOS powers the experiences we've come to rely on. This year, we were inspired to create even more meaningful ways iPhone could help you. That's actually a really generic statement, right? But that's the way that Craig Federighi began the very first iOS 15 presentation. And if you actually like, you don't have to, but look at the bullet points of that presentation and tell me where the fuck there's anything that is more meaningful or that adds meaning or makes iPhone more helpful to the vast majority of people. There are things. Like actually there are definitive things like but like they make up such a small portion of the changes. And if one thing is like, I feel, at least from my perspective, and it is a very like specific one because I was reading tech media, like the same tech media people that I read today, Joanna Stern, Nilay Patel, Dieter Bohn, those people were like gadget bloggers when I was like 15, and I've been reading them, and like I never stopped reading them, and it's like the organizations too. And they have gone from like, I don't know, seeing when companies did stupid shit and at least laughing at it to I mean, I don't know where their heads at. I don't know how the fuck it's because they live in California. But
So you're
what I'm saying?
saying that
Like,
they've become, that the tech media has become like even more like sort of sycophantic and unwilling to criticize?
it's not even unwilling. They're very interested in criticizing. It's the focus of the criticism. And like, again, I don't even think this should be the vast majority of the shit that's on my blog, actually all of it, is stuff that I do not believe should be like part of a large conversation at all. But like it is stuff that it's stuff that would have been and criticized openly by oh god, I don't want to actually name like the Old Wired or something because that's a stupid thing to say. But like I don't know, they've lost perspective on how people actually use this shit, or they've
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me because it's kind of like, I feel like Apple a while ago has ceased to kind of do, like big kind of larger scale innovation in favor of, and part of that was like Steve Jobs dying, and what happened, as far as I can understand,
no,
is kind
actually,
of the,
he it was a good that he died when he did.
well, yeah, I know.
Technology.
Yeah, like he was, he was obviously like an asshole and everything, but like, what seems to have happened, at least as far as I can tell, is partially kind of the victory of like marketing people over product people, and the folks, because like back in the day, I feel like I could go into an Apple store and like they'd like be nice about replacing stuff for no charge and stuff like that, you know what I mean? And like
You don't feel like you could do that today?
no, they're much more like, I mean, it depends on like your fucking warranty or whatever, but like I feel like there is a notable shift in the past 10 years or so in terms of the degree to which they will just like nickel and dime you, and it's like kind of been like, okay, we've won this big market share, so we don't have to innovate in a serious way anymore. We can just, focus more on the more luxury features like camera, and all that type of shit. Like there was like, I think there was a good article about how the new the newer iPhones or this next whatever generation that's about to come out is really catering towards like influencers and like TikTokers and shit like that, because the software that comes with the camera has like a much higher degree of like basically like post-production capabilities than previously it did. And so
That's a whole lot of confusion.
But again, that's like, of course, like that's like really catering to a smaller audience of users, because like for the most part, like people, like you don't need like a super fancy camera on your phone, you know, like it's nice
not just
to
that
have.
you don't need it,
like,
it's that it is a like fundamental. Sorry, this is another peeve of mine. Because I have an iPhone 12 Pro Max and I had an iPhone 8 Plus, and those two were both like the reviews of those two devices. Not they weren't exactly the same, but they were both lauded as the best smartphone camera systems available. And the iPhone 12 Pro Max, still, there's actually a round of year later reviews, and there's still all these people talking about how the camera is the best smartphone camera they've ever used. I don't know. You can probably by now, unfortunately, you can probably guess what I'm about to say. I guess I probably should just say I don't really know why. I do know why, but I am unable to get the captures that I want from this camera in any context, to a degree that is utterly absurd. And my mother, who was a photographer for a while, and like has in my opinion, like she's, for someone who doesn't know anything about like photography technically, she manages to get snaps like that are incredible. At least she used to. She was the first person to say this camera sucks, and what she meant by that was not that it wasn't incredible in low light, because it really is for a smartphone camera, but that like for the rationally priorities of the design of a smartphone camera is that it captures basically as best possible photographs in situations that are not ideal, right? Like you whip it out and you take a photo, and if it can make that photo look as good as possible, it's design. Like I've tested this camera extensively, and it's very incredible if I leave it on a tripod for 45 minutes to capture a time lapse. It's just completely ridiculous, and it's exactly what you were saying of the phone being targeted toward influencers. We are talking about a cellular phone. Like the word pro, the idea of it being a pro phone is so like, I don't know. It's the wording is important. But like, so I guess what I've tried to say is it's not even that it should or shouldn't have a better camera or not. It's that like it's just a basic it's risks and balances. God, that fucking term. So Apple has spent billions of dollars in making what is a fundamentally unideal camera, or like configure very tiny. You have to work with tiny shit, and it's not anchored, and it's going to be used in a flash, and et cetera, right? Instead of us, like, I think what we need to do is realize that threshold where that is like even, I don't know, fun anymore, of trying to push smartphone cameras to see how good they're gonna get, like, it's just bonkers to keep going, because we are, I don't know, the results. Does this make any, I guess, okay, what I'm trying to say is like what I should have said.
You're saying that they spent a lot of money on this thing and it's not even good.
Well, it's not that it's not good, because it is incredible technically. It's that it's very premise that your phone camera should be good, as opposed to if we like made one concession. The thing that I was talking about, what I talked about my phone originally, was how many things it's expected to do compared to and do well. And just fundamentally, right, you cannot, it is like a basic fact of life that you really need to, like, in order to be actually excellent at something, you have to be specific, and like you have to consolidate that excellence into one thing, right? Sorry, I'll stop. But the realization that if my phone was expected to be one less thing, like for instance, if my phone did not have a camera in it, think about like not even considering the thinness thing as it is. If this phone just did not have to have a good camera, that incredible innovation could have gone in a more slightly more rational phone-ly direction, like life maybe. Heat management. This poor device is more powerful than both of my actual like desktop class machines. But it has no ability, like when you actually require it to use that power. Of course, it has fundamentally, it's not going to be able to cool itself, like, right? So, and then
Well,
it's
yeah, it's a real tweet about the budget that's like, please help me, my family is dying. And, you know, they spent like $16,000 on candles. It's like all of the money and the effort went towards disproportionately this like relatively luxury feature because that's how Apple works. Like that's what their brand is
yeah,
like,
and I think
you know.
that made sense. Literally, it my other point is that it's not even, it actually isn't even better for the people who for that luxury ideal. So like what I was gonna say about iOS specifically, because I really shouldn't talk about hardware. I used to know something about hardware back when a transistor was something that I could it was like the size of a tack, right? And I gotta identify what it is and I know how it works. But apparently there are 2 billion transistors in my phone, so I don't think that I'm living in the same reality anymore. Anyway,
David, can I ask
yes.
you how old you are, if you don't mind?
I'm 27.
Sorry?
27.
Wait, when were transistors that?
Oh, they still are. It's so you would think, right, from the narrative of consumer technology, that miniaturization is just a universal ideal of all technology and that it is always better. But that's just like, if you delve at all into, for instance, my more infrastructural manifestations of hardware, right? Like my HVAC system has so like a capacitor is not, it's another electronic component that is also still in computers. I had to get a capacitor replaced in my air conditioning unit that was like the size of a coffee cup. But there are like, however many millions of capacitors. And
Okay,
yeah,
but
it's just,
what was the capacitance?
that's worthy of note.
Like,
What?
are the millions of tiny ones like a lot lower capacitance, or?
Oh, don't ask me that. That's the thing is, because you have like, those things cannot be the same thing, and they are. But the only reason I bring this up is because, in my opinion, right to repair is fundamentally ridiculous thing to be upset about. I mean,
Well,
yes, I
hold on.
wish there's so many other concessions that have happened before. That is just a very dumb thing to run.
Well, it's not that we center on it as like the platonic ideal of like, this is where we should start moving the needle. I think like often these things just depend on like, happenstance and what ends up getting some political traction or like is catchy or whatever the fuck. But
Completely, and I know that from my friend who worked at Apple, and he worked on like iOS 7, and he was like, yeah, literally, like up until crunch time, like people like often don't have any fucking idea like what they're gonna do for the next release, and it's always a political battle between product managers of like whose feature gets in and whose doesn't. You know what I mean? Like it's like
that would be okay if they weren't so invested in obscuring that fact. Like,
wait, are
honestly,
we talking about right
but of course they are. It's PR,
why?
like.
Why? I know plenty of software companies that I consider great companies that make great products that all the time publicly acknowledge in detail, oh fuck, we just did a dumb thing. And some I'm thinking of companies that exist for profit. I'm not actually asking you why. I'm just saying, like, trying to emphasize, like, again, that is a delusion.
I think Apple, to me, like has these vibes, and I think it makes sense when you think about who Steve Jobs was, of like wanting to appear, infallible in certain ways. I like that's their whole aesthetic, right? It's like very,
and it
it's
does
very
actually have
austere,
meaningful,
like very like sort of like no pixel out of place. So I think they're not somebody who like as a company seeks to be very gracious and approachable. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, it wasn't necessary though, because for one thing, and I think this is a big thing that is hard for everybody to acknowledge. iOS, at least from how I understand it, and iPhone, and again, I'm biased because I was 14 and I thought it was the most. I mean, you got to think I grew up like using an outhouse literally, and like the iPhone first generation compared to anything else. Getting that in 8th grade was, I mean, it was like anyway. So it was legitimately innovative, and like in very smart ways. Like the ways that the iPhone killed the ways that the iPhone changed smartphones, cellular telephones, like fundamentally is an example of where it really was just holy shit. They happened to make like come together and change paradigms that did actually meaningfully improve the way like most people's lives in using their phones. And the problem is that distinctly stopped somewhere. And it's not that Apple of course Apple is going to continue to behave as if, you know, the iPhone's the best thing in the world. It's the fact that, in my opinion, as someone who, I guess, and this is a bias, I just fundamentally believe that the way that society is organized, I believe that, like, journalism or vaguely the media has had an effective and meaningful function as keeping things like this in check. And I don't mean like just
theoretically, but in reality, like how much? Because the fact is that now more than ever, tech owns the media. You know, like the last place I worked was the Atlantic, and literally Laureen Powell Jobs just was like, oh, everybody else is buying a media company, I'm gonna buy one too. So like she fucking whatever holding group owns the Atlantic and all the other like publications kind of under the company umbrella, you know, like WAPO is obviously Amazon's outlet. The New York Times
but like
is really the only one that's like kind of remained this like institution that, you know, because it just has a big enough subscriber base that they've like been able to monetize in various ways. But for the most part, like there's like tech and media are like more and more synonymous than ever before.
Yeah, that's true, but the word, well, that is very true, yes. Citing the Atlantic as an example is I guess that's like alarming. Because specifically because of like what I think of, I've always been a New Yorker man, quote unquote, as opposed to, I don't know if there's actually a opposition between those two publications, but for when
oh yeah,
actually,
no, my good friend from the Atlantic works now at the New Yorker, and they rock. Like I have a lot more respect for them as a journalistic outlet. Although there's plenty of actual good journalism that like does happen at the Atlantic, but for the most part, like I mean, their politics shit is horrible, and like you know, it's run by people who have old power in DC and all these you know fucking networks of like whoever has all the money and power in the government, and that's a lot of like really sus people, you know. Like,
yeah, and while that is an element, actually, I know I keep sounding like I'm the one that is way more alarming to me is when, okay, and I have to get personal here. It's in the cases where like Vox Media and The Verge specifically, it's a very where like yes, they have gone from being the scrappy startup media company that had, you know, did silly pranks and stuff, and now they are a big literally conglomerate. They're part of a big conglomerate. Honestly, the way that like the business has changed their conversation, maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe it's I'm so embedded it into the way that, well, not that I'm actually embedded. That is not what alarms me, because I guess it's when specifically when they think they are being critical, like how can I say this? I need specific examples, and I just can't. You know what? Let's use the fucking Pine phone as an example. The fucking Linux phone, okay? So, here, like Dieter Bohn. I don't know if you know that name. Is a old, like not first generation gadget blogger. Okay, and now he's an editor at The Verge. He's like number 2. And I got in a like adjacent in a conversation with him. Okay, not with him. I think that he's probably muted me since, but it was in the same Twitter thread, and we were talking about weird phones, and he just happened to mention he wasn't participating. I was talking about weird phones with Ernie Smith, who's the TDM guy, and I was just talking about the Linux phone. And when I say the Linux phone, there are multiples, but I'm talking about the Pine phone specifically because it's cute and $200, and the development community is very like, they have a good sense of humor about them. And like it's what I was trying to understand why it had never been mentioned at all on The Verge. Because as someone, like, I know these people, I do know these specific people well enough that, like, even to laugh at it, like, because it is a ridiculous, I mean, it is a ridiculous concept. Fucking Linux phone, that sounds like a bad idea. Even to just say that, but it's like, it doesn't exist. Okay, and it really does. I'm not just losing my mind.
Wait,
18 hours later, I am losing my mind, but 18 to some amount of time later, Dieter Bohn published a Verge. It was a listicle of the weirdest most knit smartphones, and the Pine phone was not on it. Okay, and like, I know that is probably just a coincidence, but like, it's just, that is actually that dynamic where, like, I know it's the open source Linux community and the division between that and mainstream tech, and like, that's a whole different thing. It is it's not one that I am going to tackle in my lifetime. I'll leave it to someone else. But
yeah, but I mean, like, that's so telling about, like, tech media in general, because it's like, yes, like, while, you know, they have to be willing to level some degree of criticism at like,
no. I'm talking about, this is a phone. I'm sorry. This is a piece literally to delight phone nerds. Okay, like, a piece to be like, hey, this is weird. And like, this is not criticism. It's just a fluff listicle. And
yeah, but that's very telling. Like, I mean, that was like the whole thing that, you know, happened in 2016 and again in 2020 with, like, political campaigns where, you know, it's often just as significant what the media is not saying or covering as what they are, you know, saying and, like, talking about. And it's, you know, very purposeful that, like, even if, you know, they might be criticizing something on the surface, to some extent that truism about, like, any press being good press is true, because it informs, you know, people's view of, like, okay, what's actually out there, like, what kind of phones are out there, and, like, if they don't ever mention open source or, like, other alternatives, then it, you know, that is, like, a purposeful, like, blind spot.
But it's not, though, because but distinctly, this is not that problem. I don't know what it is, but it's not. These people definitely are aware of it, and, like, this was I don't remember the other phones, and yeah, it probably was a coincidence, but it is kind of like, I'm not talking about, like, big editorial omissions. I'm definitely not talking about intentional editorial, like, strategic emissions. Those things are not what alarms me. It's the disconnects in the very small ways. And, like, I think the reason why I'm, like, overly focused on the small things is because I distinctly, for my entire life up to this point, or, like, up till a year ago, I was definitely the person who was completely uninterested in, like, the menial conversations. And so I think, like, personally, if you needed to know, in my life, I am, like, I'm getting an oversaturation of the realization of, I guess what my insane brother would call, like, my third eye has been awoken. It's just that it's not to what lying or whatever, or anything political. It's just to, like, little tiny disconnects that don't fit any sort of ideological explanation. And I don't know, like, and the reason I guess I can't help on it is just because of how much it's not resistance when I start talking about these things. And like, I'm not trying to, like, shit on you here, but, like, it literally, and I understand 100% the drive or the process to turn it into something bigger, but I'm trying to go the opposite direction, because I've noticed that it's like, we all have got this habit of making everything grandiose, when in reality, and it really is a metaphysical thing. I'm pretty sure that human beings, I now no longer think that human beings can, like, plan to do something intentionally and, like, actually, like, make it manifest it in a way that they expected and have the, like, expected result. Like, I'm pretty sure that those platitudes of, like, we're just kind of fucking stumbling around.
have you read Stanislaw Lem?
I don't know.
Stanislaw Lem,
What is that?
the author, the Polish sci-fi author. He has this book called Sama Technologiae, which is his non-fiction book. He's most famous for his sci-fi, like Solaris. You know, the what's his name movie, Tarkovsky film. He wrote a bunch of books like Solaris, his Master's Voice, which kind of is a book that predates that Carl Sagan novel. What is it? Contact? But so
I think you might be doing it again.
What's that?
Sorry. I think you might be doing what I was just saying, but
sure.
Go on.
But more specifically, he, in his nonfiction, what he was most interested in is kind of writing a certain kind of like, for lack of a better word, futurism. But the way he starts his book is kind of saying, if humans could say, let there be light, and create light without any other consequences or like unintended effects or like all these secondary things that come about when we try to invent something, then he would have no interest whatsoever in technology. He doesn't give a shit. He would be happy to just be like, yo, dude, cool iPhone. And not ever ask, like, what the fuck is going on with an iPhone. But because we don't, and, this was written in, like, I don't know, the 60s or 70s, but, so he was, like, had the whole nuclear Cold War thing as very salient. Like, now we've created a way to, like, make human extinction distinctly a possibility in, like, any moment or when he was writing it. But I can't remember the exact phrasing he used, but he says, because we don't, that's why I wrote this book, and I think you'd really like it. Since it sounds like that's sort of the thing you're talking about, where it's not so much the twisting of technology, to suit whatever one's agenda is, whether it's a profit motive or like political ends or some combination, whether entirely like, agentful on like one's part or like just embedded in a broader system. You're more interested in like the completely unintended things because, we make mistakes, we have oversights, things just happen in these like kind of, I don't know, like odd little coincidences that result in things that weren't quite intended or unintended. They weren't just something we weren't thinking about at all. Is that right?
Oh yeah, and it's not. That is absolutely correct. And I think the important thing is, yes, I am now. That is a big deal for me in that, for one thing, I was interested in technology. For even when I grew up, like I was always talking about technological things and like imagining the future. Like in this, like I was very much, I was the person that was the most vulnerable to shit like crypto, where it's like all these big ideas and oh my god, I just want to talk about the big ideas and that's what gets me juiced up. Like we have control. We are going to make this happen. And like we have the ability to do that. I have the power to do that. It is distinctly like my need for control that is why I was so caught up and still am caught up in the narrative that the technology is us mastering things. So yeah, definitely. I guess maybe I don't know. At this point, I don't think I need to continue to it for your guys' sake. But all at once, all these people that I looked up to, like really looked at, not just abstractly, but like active, fucking Chris Messina, the guy who invented the hash. What it actually is, and this is what I need to acknowledge. I believed that American capitalism kind of worked, sort of. That sometimes it worked, and that was largely because I was an automotive journalist. Like I've always known about technology, but like personally, I kept up with an industry that is, it is very, very effectively regulated. If that's and when funny enough, I thought all that regulation was what was holding it back, and God, everything has gotten so stupid, and it's because these companies, and like literally turned very briefly into like an edgy libertarian young man. I could lean on that excuse of the car industry specifically. But like it doesn't work in the sense that like my belief that the general societal process where competition, for instance, that competition results in meaningful improvement in a general sense in products, not just as not just as things to make money, but as things to own and use. And that like I believe that competition between Microsoft and Apple, that was generally beneficial, and that all the assumptions that you have to make or have and I guess literally just actually paying close attention and having the directive of the big stories, the sexy stories of consumer tech, but just little broken it's not a good way to put that. Like, I don't know, the nuts, the screws, the foundation, basic maintenance Like the it's just not, it doesn't work because we constantly feel the need to be a part of a narrative that generally sounds like it's a narrative that is not true, if that makes sense. And I don't know if I'm trying to make that, like, this process that I'm going through somehow insightful. I hope that I've done that. I feel like I've, in this conversation, I might have done that. But I appreciate you guys listening and talking mostly. I do need to actually engage. I think okay, science fiction out of all things would be the best thing for me to engage in right now because I'm experiencing like all the ideological conversations I am worn out with, if that makes sense. Like I was the kid that was just sitting around thinking about big abstract. Like I watched a lot. I watched a lot of Star Trek. I lived a lot of Star Trek. Sort of.
Wait, sorry, what did you say about science fiction?
I like things that it's just like it is in a different space from my like existence right now, in the sense that if we acknowledge that, like, generally the only thing that science fiction, or the only thing, because I believe absurd, like the extent to which science fiction should have prepared us not, or like understand the mistakes we were gonna make, at least mistakes.
Wait, what? Okay, I'm a
Sorry,
little
okay.
confused because. Okay,
I do that.
maybe a little bit of both of us, I think. Here, so when I was talking about Lem, he's most famous for his science fiction, but Summa Technologia isn't a work of fiction, really, and it's not really based in his science fiction either, in the sense, other than that, like, you know, they're both by the same person, so naturally his thoughts.
Oh yeah, that was fucking up in exactly the same way that I'm criticizing, and that because you said the word science fiction, I latched onto it, even though I heard you say it. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah. And he's kind of it's really funny. He has this great rant against American sci-fi. He's like, basically, it was a essay kind of praising Philip K. Dick, and he called him a visionary among charlatans. And I think he lost his, like, he got of, like, the Science Fiction Society or whatever, and then, like, a couple of other people were like, okay, that's stupid. You guys are just doing that because you got salty. He called out a lot of, like, in sci-fi. Like, basically, he talked about how sci-fi kind of does this back and forth trick where when you question its, like, literary merits, it's, like, kind of calls it's like, oh, we're here for entertainment. That's what the purpose is. And then when you're not doing that, it kind of talks about itself as this, like, vanguard human society going where no one has gone before. And then, again, when you're like, okay, but, like, Star Trek or Star Wars or whatever is just, like, fucking ships in space, bro. Like, you got, like, port, starboard, and, like...
It is.
And,
I think
like,
it's both at the same time. I mean, the United Federation of Planets, like, as an idea. So, Gene Roddenberry, actually, this is perfect. Gene Roddenberry is the manifestation of, I think, the problem, in that he was a teen pilot in World War II that was, like, very foul-mouthed and person. He was flying the first, like, scale, high-altitude, long bombing run. Memphis Belt. He was thinking in that cockpit, like he was trying to dwell in a future where scarcity was not a thing. That, like, when scarcity was no longer a problem, that we would basically, like, all shit would be so much better. We would out so many of the inconsistencies that capitalism, and that scarcity is the main problem. Sorry, but, like, yeah, so, like, Star Trek is both a really repetitive, like, especially with the fucking parables. Watching it, I can't. There's no reach any Star Trek anymore for the rest of my life, and it's not because it's like it wasn't significant or that it didn't, like, actually have, like, shape my thinking genuinely over time. It's just that it's very entry level, you know. It's very digestible. It's very easy listening. So yeah, like, sci-fi. The word sci-fi now, even when we're talking about people in the past, it smells like me. It smells like a white guy who's in a t-shirt talking to my phone on a Saturday night. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I don't know. There's, like, so much though. Like, I feel like the older sci-fi, like the quote-unquote golden age shit, or like we're past the time of, like, fucking Asimov writing about whatever, or even, like...
No, we're not, because we have not somehow those basic lessons that you like, the 1 day review homework that you did, I don't know, 6th grade, talking about the meaning of Asimov's shit.
Huh? Wait,
Have
sorry,
we
what's
actually learned anything from that?
From what?
Okay. Yeah. Let me do a concrete example. God, it's been so long. It's a purely theoretical framework to understand artificially created, or to like, yeah. Even basic shit like that.
Wait, like what?
This thing is, it's been too long. What are the three? What
Yeah.
are the? It's you can't
I
harm
mean,
another
it's
human
like
being. You can't
it's
harm
kind of
another robot.
like okay, it's fine, like good for him at the time and all, but it's hardly like, oh, that's the best we can do in thinking about artificial intelligence right now, right? So it's not so much like, oh, that's the lesson we need to learn. I don't think it's really and like, I mean, I don't think technology is either, and we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but in the context of like minimization, but I don't think like sci-fi necessarily is this thing that like builds on itself, constantly making progress, right? So like at the time, that mechanistic kind of view of it probably made a lot of sense, especially when computers were new and intuitions about things made more sense as these like hard and fast laws that like, you know,
Hard and
like
fast.
how a pulley work.
Have you guys read Ted Chiang?
I like Ted Chiang.
Yeah,
Sorry, I only read user manuals, but
yeah, no, the life cycle of software objects is really good. It's like almost like a novella. It's like a long short story, and it's really worth reading in terms of
read that. Sorry.
yeah, if you do, please let me know. Like, we should do a book club about it, because like when I read it, I was like, I don't know, it like made me cry, and it's like this it's this very moving story about artificial intelligence and like creating these kind of avatar type things, like from the point of view of somebody who's like
Let me find my copy of it.
company who's doing it. It's really fucking good.
They're like Neopets kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're like Neopet type of dudes, and like they obviously train them, and the main character is a woman who actually like I think used to either be a teacher or like used to like train like real animals or something, and she gets this job at like a fancy tech company to help train these like avatar type things. It's just like it's really fucking good because it covers so much ground, like not only in terms of thinking about like machine intelligence and learning and like sort of the societal implications for that, but like also it's also just about like software companies and like them and how platforms and software and like things just degrade and switch to different things that aren't compatible with the old things, and like what kind of impact that has on these kind of really ambitious projects, like trying to train some kind of autonomous like sentient being. It's really fucking good. I definitely would want to. It's the kind of thing, like all of his work, I always just want to read and like discuss with people, and it makes me really. Sci-fi book club that I had in DC, like that was really, it was so good. I wish I could recreate something like that here in New York, or maybe online. Who knows? Anyways, I probably got to get going because I'm hungry. And like bordering on hangry.
that's a real. We're back into the real world now. Well, I should stop wasting you guys' time. Thank you so much. Like seriously, thank you for speaking at such length with me. I can't think of I don't know. I don't remember the last time that anyone has engaged me and put up with me for this long. Basically, it's been a long time.
Hold on, I just took a picture of my copy of Ted Chiang's book.
Yeah, I think I have this. I think I have the PDF somewhere of the life cycle of software objects. So
that is something
can, like,
that I need.
Send that if I like find it. But ooh, you got it signed.
I didn't. My friend got it because
nice.
Seattle, and I think he went down to Portland at some point, and Ted Chiang was doing a talk and a book signing or something.
I'm jealous. I stan. But anyways, I gotta like eat or I'm gonna die. So
yeah.
Anyways, it's been real. Thanks for engaging.
No, thank you. And hey, Zoe, I'm sorry. Zoe being the one person that has actually talked with me in spaces. I have to go to another time.
Thank you. I'm gonna trade you a recommendation. Read A Literary History of Word Processing by Matthew Kirschenbaum. It's that broad than any book has in a long time. But yeah.
That's really interesting.
I do actually, holy shit, I do actually have to either do something or eat.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
All right.
Goodbye. Thank you guys again.
Peace.